Quick question, when was the last time a game made you forget the real world? No phone, no time sense, just you and the game. These aren't quick fun games or background noise. These are some of the best single-player games that pull you in and don't let go with their story or the smooth gameplay or just the beautiful immersive worlds. If you play games to escape, get comfortable, because this list will take a while. Dishonored. Man, Dishonored is such a crazy ride, huh? The first thing you notice is the city of Dunwall. It's creepy, dirty, kind of alive in its own twisted way, and it just grabs you. You're playing as Corvo, who's been framed for a murder he didn't do, and suddenly you're stuck in this giant mess of politics, revenge, and corruption. The cool thing is, the game doesn't hold your hand. You can sneak around, peek into alleyways, eavesdrop on guards talking, and just figure stuff out for yourself, or if you're feeling bold, you can go full chaos and just wreck everyone in sight. And yeah, the city reacts to that. Kill too many people and the world gets darker and scarier. Play clean and people notice. That freedom, man, it's still insane and rare in most games. The levels are genius. Every rooftop, balcony, and hidden corner feels like it's begging you to explore it. You can teleport across gaps with blink, crawl through pipes, climb ledges, and just experiment endlessly. And honestly, some of the best moments happen when you just go off script. You might find a secret room you didn't expect, or overhear a guard's private conversation, or stumble onto a tiny story that makes you chuckle or even feel a little guilty. It's those little surprises that keep the game feeling alive years later. Combat and powers are another reason this game aged so well. Blink is obvious, but using possession to take over a rat or guard and sneak past a patrol, it never gets old. Bend time lets you slow everything down just enough to pull off crazy moves. Every fight, even small ones, feels tense because you're not just hacking and slashing. You have to think, plan, and decide how much chaos you want to cause. And the gadgets are fun too, from grenades to crossbows. There's a ton of ways to approach every encounter. The story is dark, messy, and actually memorable. You've got corruption, revenge, betrayal, and a few really cool twists along the way. But the game also takes its time letting you notice little things in the world, like newspapers, letters, graffiti, or citizens talking. It makes Dunwall feel alive. Even years later, you can get lost just wandering the streets, discovering little stories that don't even matter to the main plot. And honestly, the art style is perfect. It's gritty, it's kind of weird in a cool way, and it hasn't aged badly at all. The lighting, the sounds, the music, it all just hits. And combined with the level design and powers, it makes the game feel timeless. Dishonored aged like fine wine because it's smart, flexible, and full of surprises. You can play it now, experiment with powers in ways you never tried before, and still get those holy crap moments that make you smile, or sometimes make you feel guilty for being a little evil. Uncharted 4. So Uncharted 4 came out in 2016, and this is basically Naughty Dog showing everyone how it's done. This was Nathan Drake's send-off, and they went all out to make sure his final adventure was perfect. Right away, you can tell this game looks incredible. The graphics are absolutely insane. The environments are massive and detailed, from Madagascar markets to lush jungles to this pirate colony called Libertalia. Water looks realistic, the lighting is phenomenal, and the character models are so detailed you can see every wrinkle and expression. Even years later, this thing is a visual showcase. The story hits way harder than previous Uncharted games. Nathan's older now, he's trying to live a normal life with Elena, but he's clearly bored. Then his brother Sam shows up, who was supposedly dead, and suddenly Drake is pulled back into the treasure hunting life. The whole game explores themes about obsession and letting go of the past. It's more mature and thoughtful than just being a fun action romp. The gameplay is the most polished it's ever been in the series. Drake moves fluidly, the shooting feels tight, and they added a grappling hook that changes everything. Swinging across gaps and using it in combat to zip around makes traversal way more dynamic. The rope adds verticality to fights and lets you approach encounters differently. Speaking of combat, you can actually go full stealth in this one. The arenas are bigger with tall grass and multiple paths. You can sneak through entire sections without firing a shot if you're careful. Or you can go loud and get into these intense shootouts. Having that flexibility makes replaying encounters fun because you can try different approaches. The set pieces are jaw-dropping, but they feel more grounded than previous games. There's still crazy moments like the car chase through Madagascar or the collapsing clock tower, but nothing feels too over the top. Everything has weight and consequence. When a building crumbles, you really feel the danger. Level design is way more open than before. You get these huge areas to explore with optional pads and hidden treasures everywhere. Madagascar especially gives you this big space where you're just driving around with Sam looking for clues. It's slower paced, but it lets you soak in the atmosphere and have conversations that build the characters. The pacing overall is different from other Uncharted games. There's more downtime between action sequences where you're just talking or exploring. Some people found it slow, but it makes the big moments hit harder. You're not on this constant adrenaline rush. There's time to breathe and reflect. Those quiet moments are some of the best parts. There's a whole chapter where young Nathan and Sam are just exploring their childhood home. It's pure character development with no action, and it's fantastic. Or the scene where Nate and Elena are playing Crash Bandicoot on the couch. These human moments make you care about what happens to these people. Libertalia as a location is fascinating. This whole pirate utopia that fell apart due to greed and betrayal. Exploring the ruins and piecing together what happened through environmental storytelling is engaging. The architecture is beautiful in a decayed way, and it ties into the game's themes about obsession destroying everything. Technically, the game is a monster. Loading screens are hidden brilliantly, the frame rate stays smooth even during intense moments, and everything just works. The attention to detail is crazy, like how Drake's shirt gets dirty or wet depending on the environment, or how characters realistically grab ledges and surfaces. Playing through Uncharted 4 feels like the ultimate refinement of everything Naughty Dog learned over the years. The climbing is smooth, the shooting is satisfying, the stealth works well, and the story keeps you hooked. It's the most complete package in the series. What makes it age so well is that it was already pushing boundaries when it came out. The graphics were top tier then, and they're still impressive now. The storytelling was mature and thoughtful, which doesn't get dated. The gameplay mechanics are polished enough that nothing feels clunky going back to it. Sleeping dogs. Sleeping Dogs is one of my most favorite games of all time, mostly because it does a lot of things differently than other games. First off, the city is amazing. Hong Kong feels alive in a way that's hard to explain. You've got busy streets, narrow alleyways, glowing neon signs, markets with vendors, and random people walking around doing their own thing. Sometimes you just stop for a second and notice how detailed everything is. The way traffic moves, how people react if you bump into them, or even small fights breaking out in the streets. It's not perfect, but it feels lived in, and that makes exploring really satisfying. The movement and combat are where the game shines. Fighting isn't about guns the whole time. You mostly punch, kick, counter, and throw people around, and chaining moves together feels really rewarding. You can do a quick dodge and follow it up with a grab or a kick, and when you pull off a big combo, it feels satisfying. There's a rhythm to the fights, and even though it can get a little repetitive if you do a lot of the same encounters, it's still more engaging than just shooting at enemies all the time. The parkour and rooftop sections also had a lot. You can jump across roofs, climb walls, swing off ledges, and chase someone or escape the cops in ways that feel fluid and fun. Driving is a mixed bag. The cars are okay, but sometimes they feel a little floaty, and it can get frustrating when you're trying to weave through traffic during a chase. The story keeps things interesting, even if it's not super deep. You're Weishan, an undercover cop trying to bring down the triads from the inside. Some characters are over the top, and a few cutscenes get dramatic in a silly way, but the main arc works because you feel tension being undercover. You're caught between doing what's right and keeping your cover, and that moral tension actually makes the missions more engaging. You care a little more about fights and choices because it isn't just random chaos. It feels like you're living in this world and reacting to it. There are flaws, of course. Some side missions can get repetitive, like clearing small gang hideouts or delivering items. Certain collectibles feel boring to track down, and the AI can act dumb at times. Enemies sometimes notice you too late or too quickly, and civilians will occasionally move in ways that break immersion. But these flaws are minor compared to what the game gets right. The combat, movement, city design, and freedom to explore more than make up for them. The world design is a big reason this game still works. Every district has a different vibe. Some are bustling markets, some are high-rise office areas, and some are cramped alleys filled with crime. The day-night cycle, weather effects, and small random events all make it feel alive. You can chase a target across rooftops, fight your way through a busy street, and then jump into a car and drive through traffic while avoiding pedestrians and cops. That mix of vertical movement, street-level chaos, and driving is unique and still fun today. So yeah, overall, the combat is still satisfying, the city's still alive, and exploring or messing around never really gets old. It's not perfect, story isn't super deep, side missions can feel repetitive, and AI isn't perfect, but but the core systems are solid enough that you can still hop in and have a good time. Running across rooftops, jumping into fights, and exploring the city makes the game feel alive, and that's why it still works years later. Max Payne 3.
Now get down!
So Max is older now, completely wrecked by booze and painkillers, and he's basically a shell of who he used to be. The noir atmosphere from the first two games is mostly gone. Now you're in sunny Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is this crazy contrast. But it works because Max is this dark, broken dude stumbling through this bright, colorful world, and it just emphasizes how out of place he is. Max is working private security for this wealthy family, and of course everything goes sideways immediately. People get kidnapped, Max screws up, more people die, and he's just drowning in guilt the whole time. The narrative jumps around between different time periods, which keeps you guessing about what actually happened. It's noir storytelling, but updated for a more modern, cynical vibe. The gunplay though? Oh man, the gunplay is phenomenal. Rockstar took the bullet time mechanic and polished it to perfection. Diving through the air in slow motion while precisely picking off enemies never gets old. Level design is really strong too. You're fighting through nightclubs, favelas, office buildings, airports, even a freaking stadium. Each environment is detailed and destructible, cover gets shredded by gunfire, and there's multiple paths through most encounters. The game keeps throwing you new scenarios at you so it doesn't get repetitive. Also, what's interesting is how divisive this game was with fans. Some people loved the new direction, others hated that it moved away from the noir aesthetic of the originals. I get both sides, but I think what Rockstar did works. They kept the core gameplay intact while updating everything else for a modern audience. Max as a character here is fascinating because he's not cool or aspirational, he's pathetic and self-destructive. He keeps making terrible decisions, drinking himself stupid, and getting people killed. But you stick with him because underneath all that mess, there's still a guy trying to do the right thing even when he knows it's pointless. That airport level is absolutely insane, by the way. You're fighting through this huge shootout that just keeps escalating. The pacing of that sequence is perfect, building tension until it explodes into chaos. It's one of those levels you remember long after finishing the game. Max Payne 3 also looks incredible on PC if you got the hardware. Rockstar's optimization was solid, and cranking everything to max settings makes it a visual showcase. Even the console versions look great for 2012. What makes this game age well is that the shooting mechanics are just fundamentally excellent. Graphics can get dated, but satisfying gunplay lasts forever. Diving through the air in bullet time while dual-wielding guns will always be fun. That doesn't change. Max Payne 3 proved that Rockstar could take someone else's series and make it their own while respecting what came before. It's a different beast from the original games, but it's still excellent in its own right. That's why it's aged so well, because at its core, it's just a really well-made shooter with style and substance. Wolfenstein II: The New Colossus. Alright, so Wolfenstein: The New Colossus came out in 2017, and this game is just wild from start to finish. Machine Games took everything they built with the New Order and cranked it up to 11 in the most insane ways possible. So the setup is you're BJ Blazkowicz and you're literally dying. Like, the game starts with you in a wheelchair on a stolen Nazi submarine, barely holding it together after getting messed up at the end of the first game. You're coughing up blood, can barely stand, and then Nazis attack the sub, so you gotta defend it while being half dead. It's such a brutal opening that immediately sets the tone. The whole premise is that the Nazis won World War II and now they occupy America. You're seeing the Ku Klux Klan working with Nazi soldiers, propaganda everywhere, and this alternate history version of 1960s America under fascist rule. It's dark and uncomfortable, but that's kind of the point. The game doesn't shy away from showing how messed up this world is. Gameplay-wise, it's classic Wolfenstein. You're mowing down Nazis with ridiculous weapons, and it feels amazing. The guns are meaty and powerful, whether you're dual-wielding shotguns or using the laser weapons, Combat is fast and aggressive. The game rewards you for pushing forward instead of hiding behind cover. The hatchet is still your melee weapon, and getting up close to execute Nazis never stops being satisfying. You can throw it too, which is great for stealth kills. Speaking of stealth, you can approach a lot of encounters quietly if you want, taking out commanders before they call reinforcements, or, just go loud and cause mayhem. Both playstyles work. The level variety is pretty crazy. You're fighting on that submarine, then you're in irradiated New York, then you're in Roswell, New Mexico at a Nazi-occupied town, then Venus, which is just absurd. The game keeps throwing you new environments at you, and they're all visually interesting and fun to fight through. The boss fights are kinda weak, honestly. There's not many of them, and the ones that exist aren't super memorable. The game is more about the moment-to-moment combat and exploration than big set-piece battles. Visually, the game looks great. IbTech's 6th engine doing work. The art direction is fantastic with all this retro-futuristic Nazi technology mixed with 1960s Americana. The color palette is vibrant, which contrasts nicely with the dark themes. Performance on consoles was a bit rough at launch with some frame rate dips. The PC version ran better if you had decent specs. Nothing game-breaking, but noticeable during intense firefights. Upgrading your abilities and weapons add some light RPG elements. You can spec into stealth, armor, or health-focused builds. It's not super deep, but it gives you some customization options. The game is pretty short. You can blow through it in like 10 to 12 hours. Some people felt that was too brief for a full-price game, but honestly, there's no filler. Every mission has purpose, and the pacing stays tight throughout. Hitman Blood Money. Hitman Blood Money is one of those games that somehow keeps getting better with time. You play as Agent 47, a professional hitman, and right from the start, you know you're stepping into a world that's all about thinking ahead, being patient, and being clever. What really makes this game special is how much freedom it gives you. Every mission is like a giant playground for your own creativity. You can sneak around quietly, blend in with crowds, or dress up in different disguises to get close to your targets without anyone noticing. There's a real sense of satisfaction when you pull off a plan perfectly, especially if you do it in a way no one expects. The missions are all over the world, and each one has its own vibe. One moment you're in a huge mansion full of rich people at a fancy party, and the next you're in a grimy warehouse or a small town full of unsuspecting civilians. The level design is amazing because it feels alive. People walk around doing their own thing, security guards patrol in realistic patterns, and there's always a hidden route or secret spot you can use to get the drop on someone. Even now, the way the game builds tension in each level feels top-notch. You're constantly thinking, planning, watching, and waiting, and when you finally get it right, it feels amazing. The graphics, while dated by today's standards, don't really take away from the experience. The environments are detailed enough to feel real, and the animations make the world feel like it's moving on its own. There's also something about the dark, moody music that makes sneaking around feel intense without being over the top. It gives every mission this feeling like something could go wrong at any moment, which keeps you on your toes the whole time. The story is simple but effective. Agent 47 is on a mission to rise through the ranks of the Underworld, taking on bigger and riskier jobs while dealing with rival assassins and people who want to take him down. The story doesn't hit you over the head, but it gives you a reason to care and keeps you moving through the game. What's really cool is how your actions can change how much money you earn and how successful your missions are, which makes every decision feel important. Even today, Blood Money feels smooth. The controls work, the missions feel alive, and there's so much variety in how you can approach each target that it never gets boring. You can replay the same level multiple times and find new ways to complete it, which makes it feel like it has endless life. This is one of those rare games where you can step back years later, play a mission, and still feel the same thrill, tension, and satisfaction you did the first time. Hitman Blood Money doesn't just hold up. It proves that a game doesn't need the newest graphics to be brilliant. It's smart, it's tense, it's creative, and it's one of the best stealth games ever made. Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. Okay, where to even start? This game isn't just like fine wine, it's like some legendary bottle of wine found in a king's tomb that somehow still tastes perfect. When you boot this game up today, it's honestly hard to believe it came out back in 2005. The way it moves, the way it feels, it's just smoother than so many stealth games that came out last year. You are Sam Fisher, the ultimate shadow, and the game makes you feel like him. He's not just some silent tough guy. He's this older, kind of grumpy dude who is just the best at what he does. But the main reason this game is a masterpiece is the light and dark. It's not just an idea, it's the whole game. You have a little light meter on your suit, and if it's all the way down, you are invisible. A guard can literally walk up, bump into you, say excuse me, and keep walking because he just thinks he bumped the wall. It's the most powerful feeling. You aren't just hiding from the dark, you are the dark. And you control it. This is the best part. You see a bright light shining in a hallway, you can take out your pistol and pop, just shoot the light bulb, the whole hallway goes dark, and now it's your hallway. You have a gadget on your rifle called the OCP. You can aim it at a security camera, a computer screen, or a big overhead light, and click. It shuts it off for a few seconds. You control the environment. You are the predator, and the guards are just walking around in your world. The sound is just as important. The game measures how much noise you make. If you run, you're loud. If you walk, you're quiet. But it goes deeper. Walking on carpet is almost silent. Walking on a metal grate is super loud. You have to think about every single step. It makes you slow down and be patient. When you finally sneak past 3 guards by walking slowly on the carpet while they're all looking the other way, you feel like a genius. And the move Sam has? He's like an old ninja. He can do a split jump in a narrow hallway, bracing himself against both walls above a guard's head. He can hang from a pipe on the ceiling, wait for a guard to walk under him, and drop down to grab him. The game just gives you the tools and the level and says, okay, figure it out. It even had this co-op mode. It was a whole different story with its own levels built just for 2 players. You and a friend had to work together. You'd have to boost your buddy up to a high ledge or stand back to back to take out 2 guards at once. It's something games still can't get right, and this game nailed it decades ago. It just all comes together. The dark and light, the sound, the gadgets like sticky cameras you can use to spy on people, the amazing music by Amon Tobin that's all tense and spooky. Chaos Theory is the peak of stealth. It respects you, it trusts you to be smart, and that is why it will always, always be amazing to play.
Forget it. I don't want to find anything anyway. Get behind some cover!
Ryse, son of Rome. Ryse, Son of Rome is one of those games that just makes you stop for a second and think, damn, this still looks crazy good. Like seriously, it came out more than 10 years ago and it still looks better than half the new stuff dropping today. The detail in the armor, the way sunlight hits the shields, the facial animations, the blood, the smoke, everything just feels alive. It's wild how good it still looks. You play as Marius Titus, this loyal Roman soldier whose whole world basically falls apart. His family gets murdered and that kicks off his whole story of revenge, duty, and war. It's not some huge open world game, it's a straight story-driven ride, and that's honestly what makes it work so well. Every mission feels like a scene from a movie. You're leading Roman legions, marching through burning villages, standing on beaches as arrows fly past. It all looks and sounds massive. The thing that really hits about Ryse is the atmosphere. You can almost feel ancient Rome when you play. The crowded streets, the chaos of war, the shouting soldiers, everything is detailed and immersive. The way the game mixes gameplay and cutscenes is so smooth too. There's no weird pause or loading screen between scenes. 1 second you're fighting, and the next you're watching a perfectly shot cinematic, and it just blends together so naturally. It's like watching a movie, but you're in control. The combat, yeah, it's pretty simple, but it feels powerful. Every sword swing, every shield bash, every finisher has weight. You don't just mash buttons, you time your moves, watch for enemies, and hit those brutal executions that make you wince a little. The camera zooms in, the slow motion kicks, and it just feels so satisfying. The game nails that cinematic combat feeling where you're not just fighting, you're performing. Marius himself is a great main character. He's serious, loyal, and broken at the same time. You can really feel the pain and anger behind everything he does. And the voice acting sells it. Every line, every scream, every quiet moment has emotion in it. The story's not overly long or complicated, but it's done well. It gives you enough reason to care, and by the end, it really hits hard. Ryse also nails the vibe of Roman warfare better than any game ever has. Those shield wall moments where you command your men to raise their shields while arrows rain down feel so good. It's like you're actually leading a squad, not just playing solo. The whole game has that heavy, grounded, cinematic tone. No goofy moments, no filler, just straight up drama and war. What's crazy is that a lot of people didn't get it when it came out. They said it was too short or too simple, but when you play it now, it actually feels perfect. It's focused, it knows what it's doing, and it never drags. You can finish it in a few sessions, but it stays with you after. The story, the visuals, the atmosphere, it all sticks. Even today, when you boot it up on PC or a new console, it still feels modern. The graphics still blow you away, the combat still feels punchy, and the presentation is just unreal. Spec Ops: The Line.
Target down!
Cover me! I'm reloading!
More coming over the dune!
Alright, so Spec Ops: The Line. This came out in 2012, and dude, this game messed people up. Like, legitimately messed with their heads in ways most shooters don't even attempt. On the surface, it looks like just another generic military shooter, right? You got your 3-man squad, you're a special ops captain named Walker, and you're heading into Dubai after these massive sandstorms buried the city. Seems straightforward. Go in, find survivors, figure out what happened to this rogue battalion that stayed behind. Standard military stuff. Except it's not that at all. This game is basically Apocalypse Now meets Heart of Darkness, but in a video game, and it uses the medium to absolutely destroy you mentally. I'm gonna try not to spoil too much, but it's hard to talk about why this game matters without getting into some of it. The gameplay itself is honestly pretty mediocre. It's a cover-based third-person shooter, and the mechanics are fine, but nothing special. Shooting feels okay, the cover system works, but it's not gonna blow your mind compared to other shooters from that era. And that's kind of intentional. The developers wanted the gameplay to feel routine, so the story hits harder. Dubai as a setting is incredible though. You're fighting through this buried city with skyscrapers half submerged in sand, luxury hotels destroyed and covered in dunes, and there's this apocalyptic beauty to it all. The art direction carries this game hard. Everything has this desaturated look that gets progressively worse as the story goes darker. Walker and a squad start off as these confident military dudes doing their job. The banter is light, they're cracking jokes, everything seems fine, but as you push deeper into Dubai, things start getting weird and morally complicated. You're making decisions that seem right in the moment, but the consequences are horrifying. There's this one scene, and it's one of the most disturbing moments in gaming. The game forces you to do something terrible, and then it shows you exactly what you did, and you can't look away. It's brutal and intentional, making you complicit in the horror instead of just watching it happen. What's genius about Spec Ops is how it deconstructs the military shooter genre. All those games where you're the hero mowing down hundreds of enemies without consequence, where everything is black and white, good guys versus bad guys, this game takes that formula and asks, what if you're not the hero? What if your presence is making everything worse? The loading screen tips change as you progress. Early on, they're standard tutorial stuff, but later they start calling you out. This isn't a game about redemption or heroism, it's about the cost of violence and the lies we tell ourselves to justify our actions. Heavy stuff for what looked like a generic shooter. Graphically, the game is dated now for sure. Character models are stiff, textures are muddy, but again, the art direction makes up for technical limitations. The way sand moves and covers everything, the lighting during sandstorms, the contrast between destroyed luxury and desperate survival, it all creates this unique atmosphere. What makes Spec Ops: The Line special is how it uses interactivity to make its point. Books and movies can tell you war is hell, but this game makes you pull the trigger. It forces you to participate in atrocities and then asks you if you enjoyed it. That player agency creates guilt in a way other mediums can't replicate. The game sold poorly, which is a shame, but also kind of makes sense. People bought it expecting a fun shooter and got traumatized. The marketing didn't help either. They couldn't really advertise what the game actually was without spoiling it. So it flew under the radar for a lot of people. The mediocre shooting doesn't matter as much because you're so invested in what's happening narratively. You keep pushing forward not because it's fun, but because you need to know how deep this rabbit hole goes. Tomb Raider Underworld is the final game in the classic trilogy before the series got rebooted, and it is honestly the best looking and most ambitious one of that old style. You play as Lara Croft, and she is on a deeply personal mission to find her missing mother, which leads her to investigate myths about the Norse god Thor and his legendary hammer Mjolnir. The game starts with a huge explosion at her mansion and then jumps back in time to show you how everything led up to that crazy moment. You travel to some incredible locations like the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, and the lush jungles of Thailand, and the rainy forests of Mexico, and the icy Arctic. The graphics were ahead of their time, and the environments are huge and open, which makes you feel like you are actually exploring lost civilizations that no one has touched for centuries. The gameplay is all about platforming and climbing and solving massive puzzles, rather than just shooting endless waves of bad guys. Lara moves really smoothly in this one because they used motion capture to make her jump and swing and climb like a real gymnast. The puzzles are genuinely clever and usually involve moving giant statues or pulling levers to operate ancient machinery that spans across the entire level. You have to pay attention to your surroundings because there are no glowing markers telling you exactly where to go, so you have to use your brain to figure out the path forward. One of the best parts of the game is when you go to southern Mexico and you get to ride Lara's motorcycle through the jungle to travel between different Mayan temples. It gives you a sense of freedom and speed that breaks up the slow climbing sections perfectly, and the bike controls feel surprisingly good for an adventure game. The combat is pretty standard with your dual pistols and sticky grenades, but later in the game you actually get to wield Thor's hammer, and it makes you feel incredibly powerful because you can blast enemies with lightning bolts. There are also some really epic moments, like when you have to deal with a gigantic kraken monster in an underwater temple by dropping a huge spike on its head instead of fighting it directly. It captures that lonely and mysterious vibe of being a Tomb Raider perfectly, and it is a great send-off for the classic version of Lara Croft. Mafia II is one of those story games that really pulls you into its world. It drops you straight into the 1940s and 1950s, and the whole thing feels like a long, slow-burn gangster movie. You play as Vito Scaletta, this kid who grows up in a poor immigrant family. His dad works himself to death, the bills never get paid, and Vito just gets tired of watching his mom struggle every day. When he comes back home after World War II, he wants a clean break, but life doesn't really give him that option. Bills start piling up again, trouble shows up fast, and that's when he and his best friend Joe slip into the mafia life, thinking it's the easy way out. The whole city of Empire Bay feels super alive. It's not a playground, it's more like a big movie set that you're walking through. You get these snowy streets in winter where cars move slow and everything looks cold and gray. Then you have the bright 50s era with neon signs, shiny diners, glowing ads, and that old music playing on the radio. The attention to the small stuff is crazy. The posters, the clothes, the way people talk, the style of each neighborhood, everything feels like someone put real care into making it look and sound like that time period. The story is the main thing here. It's not trying to be some open world checklist game. It's way more personal. It's about Vito trying to rise up because he wants a better life, but every step he takes pulls him deeper into problems. You see how easy it is for dreams to twist into something ugly. His friendship with Joe is a huge part of it. Joe is loud, messy, and not the smartest guy, but he's always down to help Vito, even if he drags him into crazy situations. Their dynamic feels natural, like two guys who grew up together, talk trash, make stupid choices, and still got each other's backs. Mission-wise, the game gives you a ton of variety. You rob stores, chase people through back alleys, sneak into buildings, dump bodies, get into full shootouts with rival crews, and even go through big cinematic moments where everything goes nuts. The guns sound heavy and rough, and every fight feels tight and gritty. There's no superhero stuff here. When you mess up, you feel it. When you get hit, it hurts. And when a mission goes well, it feels clean and satisfying. The pacing is also on point. You get slow moments where Vito is just trying to live his life, buying new clothes, hanging out at home, earning money, then suddenly everything explodes and you're in the middle of a huge war between crime families. It builds tension in a really good way. You always feel like something big is coming. The world itself also shifts with the story. You move from a beat-up old house to a nicer apartment, you see the seasons change, the city around you slowly reflects the time passing and the choices Vito makes. It gives the whole thing a grounded, real feeling, like you're living through years of someone's life and watching it unfold piece by piece. If you're into crime dramas with strong characters, heavy moments, and that classic American mob vibe, this one is a must-play. Metro Last Light is one of those games that pulls you into its world so hard that after a while you kind of forget you're even playing a game. It's a first-person story shooter set in a ruined Moscow, based on the Metro novels by Dmitry Glukovsky. The whole world is basically dead after a nuclear war, and the remaining people live underground in the metro system. Different stations turn into different factions, different cultures, different beliefs. And the surface is just a nightmare full of radiation, mutated creatures, broken buildings, and this depressing silence that makes everything feel wrong. You play as Artyom, a young soldier who isn't some big heroic guy. He's quiet, serious, and tired in the way that makes sense for the world he lives in. Last Light continues directly from Metro 2033, but it does a really good job making you feel the weight of what he did in the first game. He's dealing with guilt, doubt, and all the pressure people put on him. It's not told in some loud, dramatic way, it's more in the small lines he says, or how people talk to him, or the flashback-like visions he gets. The world building is honestly the strongest thing here. Every station you visit looks like people actually live there. You see kids running around, musicians playing, people arguing, soldiers cleaning guns, damaged walls patched with metal plates, flickering lights, and a ton of little details. It makes the world feel lived in, not just game levels. You can literally walk around and just listen to people talk, and it tells you more about the world than any cutscene would. The game has a strong mix of stealth and action. When you're underground, stealth really matters. Lights are your biggest enemy. If you stay in the shadows, you can sneak behind people, take them down quietly, or even spare them. You can shoot out bulbs, turn off generators, or unscrew light bulbs with your hands. Artyom carries a little lighter, a gas mask, air filters, bullets, and handmade weapons. It all feels very low-tech and dirty, but that's the point. This world is held together with tape, screws, and old parts. When things go loud, the combat is gritty and unstable. Guns shake, ammo is low, and enemies react aggressively. You don't spray bullets like a superhero, you fire in bursts, reload slow, take cover, and listen to the breathing inside your gas mask. The whole thing has a very sweaty, close quarters feeling. The surface sections are a big highlight. You have to put on your gas mask, change filters, wipe dirt and blood off the visor, and watch out for radiation pockets. The surface feels open, but also extremely dangerous. Mutants come out of nowhere, the sky looks sick and polluted, and the silence makes everything tense. Even walking across a field feels like a fight for survival. One thing people forget is how much atmosphere comes from sound. You hear echoes, distant screams, wind howling through broken buildings, metal creaking, slow footsteps, your own heavy breathing. The game barely uses music during gameplay, so the world itself becomes the soundtrack. Story-wise, Last Light is bigger than 2033, but still personal. You get pulled into a conflict between factions like the Reich, the Communists, and the Rangers. There's politics, betrayal, and a ton of tension because everyone wants control of the Metro. But at the same time, there's a supernatural element tied to the Dark Ones. These moments never feel forced. They show Artyom's connection with something he doesn't fully understand, and it gives the game a unique identity. It's not just another shoot mutants and soldiers story. The pacing is clean. You get quiet story moments, camps, tunnels, then suddenly full-on battles, then a creepy horror section, then back to exploration. Nothing feels thrown in for filler. Even the horror moments, like walking through ghost tunnels or hearing distant whispers, feel like they belong to the world, not some jump scare gimmick. The decisions you make also matter, but in a very subtle way. The game doesn't pop up a choice menu, it just watches how you act. Do you help people? You spare enemies? Do you explore and listen to conversations? All those tiny actions push you toward either the good or bad ending. It's one of the few games where choices actually feel natural instead of forced. The Last of Us Part 1 is honestly one of the most important single-player games ever made. Not because it tries to be artsy, but because it mixes story, gameplay, and small details in a way that feels straight-up believable. It came out back in 2013 on the PS3, and for that time, it was crazy how good it looked, how real the characters felt, and how tight the whole experience was. The remake just makes everything cleaner, but the heart of the game is still the same. You play as Joel, a middle-aged guy who went through something horrible at the start of the outbreak. The game doesn't hide it or drag it out, it just hits you with it, and then jumps 20 years ahead when the fungus has already ruined the whole world. Cities are broken down, the government barely exists, and different groups run different areas, each with their own rules and problems. Joel is tired, he's seen too much, and he doesn't really care about anything anymore except staying alive. Then he ends up having to take Ellie, a teenage girl, across the country. It starts as a job, nothing emotional, nothing dramatic, but the cool thing about this game is how slow and natural the relationship builds. It happens through small conversations, normal quiet moments, little jokes, arguments, the way they react to danger, and even the way they carry themselves when things go wrong. It feels like watching two people who don't fit together slowly become the only people they can rely on. The world itself feels like it went through a real disaster. There's a lot of attention to everyday stuff, ruined apartments where people once lived, notes left behind, cars stuck on highways, school buildings covered in mold, and areas where the infected basically took over. The fungus idea is actually inspired by a real thing called cordyceps that affects insects. So the whole infected concept doesn't feel like sci-fi zombies. It feels grounded, like something that could actually happen. Gameplay-wise, it's very simple on paper. You've got stealth, crafting, shooting, melee, and exploring. But the way the game handles these things is what makes it unique. The materials you pick up actually matter. You're always short on something, so building a health kit might mean you can't build a Molotov cocktail, and that choice changes how fights go. Guns shoot slow and rough, not like action hero style. Joel isn't some super soldier. He's older, he's slower, and the game shows that in his animations and the way he fights. When he punches someone, it looks like a guy who's fighting out of frustration and survival, not style. Different infected types matter too. Runners are basic but fast. Clickers use sound to see, so you have to move super carefully around them. Bloaters are tanky and throw spores. Each one changes the pace of the game. And the human enemies are just as dangerous, because they act like people trying to live in a broken world, not just generic enemies. A lot of people don't realize how much small stuff makes this game powerful. Ellie reacts to things around her. Comments on areas, picks up items to look at them, gets scared, gets excited, and talks when the moment feels right. Joel stays quiet a lot because that's who he is. Their personalities come out through normal actions, not big speeches. That's why the game feels more human than most other story games. You also go through different seasons as the story moves, and each one has its own tone. Summer is rough and full of danger. Fall feels sad and colder. Winter is brutal and brings some of the most memorable moments in the whole game. Spring feels lighter, but still uneasy. This slow shift helps the story feel like a full journey instead of levels. The music is another huge part of why the game hits hard. It's not loud orchestral stuff. It's mostly simple guitar notes from Gustavo Santaolalla. Nothing over the top, just small sounds that match the feeling of each scene, like the game refusing to push emotions too hard and just letting things breathe. The ending is one of those endings that gets people talking, because it's not good guy saves the world. It feels personal, messy, selfish, and honestly very believable for the type of man Joel is. It's one of the few endings in games where people still argue about it even today. The Last of Us Part 1 isn't special for one single thing. It's special because every part of it works together cleanly. The acting, the writing, the world design, the small details, the grounded gameplay, the slow pacing, the realistic characters, the way the game never treats you like a superhero. It feels like a road trip through a world that fell apart and two people trying to find something worth holding on to. That's why people say it's a must-play. It's heavy, it's emotional, but it's also just a damn well-made game from every angle. Gears of War 4 is the game that started a whole new era for the franchise because it was the first main game developed by the Coalition instead of the original creators at Epic Games. It was a huge deal back in the day because everyone was worried if the new studio could capture that magic, but they honestly nailed the heavy and crunchy feel that makes Gears so special. You play as JD Phoenix, who is the son of the legendary hero Marcus Phoenix from the first trilogy, and he has his own squad with his friends Kate and Bell. The story takes place 25 years after the war ended, and humanity is rebuilding, but suddenly a new enemy called the Swarm shows up to ruin everything. It is called because the first act makes you fight these security robots called DBs, which feels a bit different, but once the slime and monsters show up, it feels exactly like the classic Gears we all love. The gameplay is still the king of third-person cover shooters, and nobody does it better than this series. You have the famous roadie run where the camera shakes and you sprint low to the ground to slam into a wall for cover. The shooting feels incredibly impactful, especially when you use the Nasher shotgun to blow enemies into pieces, or use the Lancer, which is that iconic assault rifle with a chainsaw bayonet attached to it. They added some new moves like being able to reach over cover and yank an enemy towards you to stab them, which keeps the combat moving fast so you are not just sitting behind a wall the whole time. You also have the active reload mechanic where you have to tap a button at the exact right second during a reload to get a damage boost, and it makes even reloading your gun feel like a minigame. One of the sickest features in this game is the weather system because the planet is getting hit by these massive electrical storms called wind flares. The wind is so strong that it actually affects your grenades and projectiles, so if you throw a grenade into the wind, it might fly back at your face or curve around a corner. You have to dodge lightning strikes while fighting, and sometimes you can shoot loose pipes or debris to make them fly into enemies and crush them. It adds this chaotic layer to the fights that makes the world feel dangerous and alive. The graphics are also ridiculous because this game was a showcase for Unreal Engine 4, and even now the lighting and textures look amazing. The environments are super detailed, from the creepy underground mines to the stormy outdoor areas. It is also really cool to see old man Marcus Phoenix join up with the young squad because he is just a grumpy old dad who hates everything, and his banter with JD is genuinely funny. It might not be as legendary as the original trilogy, but it is a super solid action game that sets up the new story perfectly, and the gunplay is just pure, satisfying fun.
Should be okay here. Oh yeah? Define okay.
Not immediately dead?
Call of Juarez Gunslinger is basically that game you don't expect much from, then suddenly you're like, wait, why is this actually kind of fire? It's a first-person shooter, yeah, but the whole vibe is more like someone telling you a wild bar story while you play through it. You're this old bounty hunter named Silas Greaves, and he's sitting in a saloon, drinking and telling a bunch of random folks about all the crazy shootouts he had back in the day. And the cool part? The entire story changes based on how he tells it. Like, if he says, and then a whole bunch of bandits came out of nowhere, boom, the game literally rewinds time and suddenly more bandits spawn. Or if someone interrupts him and says, wait bro, that doesn't sound right, the level kind of shifts mid-play. Buildings reshape, enemies disappear, the sky changes because he's fixing his story. It's goofy, but in a good way. It gives the game this fun, playful personality. Gameplay-wise, it's super straightforward, super smooth. Fast gunfights, quick draw duels, bullet time slowdown where you kind of feel like a cowboy version of Max Payne, upgrades that make you crack shots at insane speed. It's not trying to be realistic, it's just stylish as hell. The guns have that punchy boom sound, dust flies everywhere, enemies yell dramatic cowboy lines, and Silas keeps talking smack the whole time like he's reliving his golden days. And honestly, the pacing is perfect. No boring filler, no dragging sections, it's just you blasting your way through frontier towns, canyons, mines, forests, all wrapped in this comic book art style that looks crisp without trying too hard. But the real fun part, the game knows it's telling a story. And the game itself kind of plays along. Sometimes Silas brags too much, and the level goes crazy. Sometimes he forgets a detail and rewinds. Sometimes someone in the saloon questions him and the whole direction shifts. It's like playing inside a tall tale. It's short, yeah, like a few hours, but it's tight, focused, and feels like the gaming equivalent of a good popcorn western. Not too serious, not too dumb, just the right amount of hell yeah. If you like clean, punchy gunplay and games with personality, this one lands. It's basically a bite-sized, stylish cowboy action story told by a dude who's probably exaggerating half of it, and you just go along for the ride.
Son of a bitch! Take him out! It's just one man!
Until Dawn. Until Dawn is basically an interactive horror movie where you control a whole group of teenagers stuck in a mountain lodge for one long awful night. It's made by Supermassive Games, the same guys who later made all those Dark Pictures titles, but this one is still their best work by far. It came out in the PS4 era, and a lot of people didn't expect much from it, but it blew up because it felt fresh and super fun to watch and play. So the setup is simple. A bunch of friends return to an old mountain cabin a year after something terrible happened there. They're trying to move on, chill, reconnect, whatever, but the place is basically cursed with bad vibes from the second they step foot in it. The game plays out like a movie, third person, fixed camera angles, a lot of sneaking around dark hallways, traps, jump scares, weird noises in the woods, all like classic horror stuff. But the big thing here is the choices. Every decision you make actually matters. It's not fake choice where nothing changes. In this game, people really die. Like, brutally. And when someone dies, they're gone for the rest of the story. No cheap revives. Because of that, you start treating every tiny decision with stress. Even the most innocent choices, like go left or right, open this door now or later, save someone or grab something first, can completely flip the ending. The game constantly reminds you about the butterfly effect. Basically, small choices snowball into big stuff. The characters are very teen movie-ish on purpose. You've got the nice guy, the jerk, the shy girl, the queen bee, the funny dude, the athletic dude, all the usual types. But as the night goes on, you actually start liking or hating them because the writing and acting are surprisingly solid. And the performances stand out because the game used full motion capture. They're real faces, real expressions. It makes it feel like you're watching a real show. The horror in this game isn't just boo jump scare. It mixes psychological horror, slasher movie energy, and even a bit of weird folklore. The cool thing is that the story doesn't stick to just one type of threat. It switches lanes and keeps you guessing what the hell is actually happening on that mountain. And one thing people never forget is how the game keeps shifting tone. At first, it feels like a typical teen slasher setup. Then it slowly starts turning into something way darker and way stranger. They drop hints through old clues, hidden recordings, newspaper cutouts, weird visions, creepy doctor scenes, little pieces that start forming a bigger picture. Gameplay-wise, it's mostly exploring, making choices, and quick-time events. And yeah, the QTEs matter a lot. Miss one at the wrong moment, someone's head might be rolling next scene. Some people try to do the save everybody run, and others just let chaos happen because it's fun watching how wildly things can go wrong. What makes Until Dawn stand out is that it feels like a full package. The atmosphere, the story, the production quality, the sense of tension, because anyone can die at any time. It's not deep in a philosophical way, it's just a damn entertaining, stylish horror ride with enough surprises to keep you hooked for a whole night. And that's kind of the whole point. It's a sit with your friends, scream, laugh, and argue over choices kind of game. Even playing alone is fun because it feels like you're running a personal horror movie where you decide who lives and who gets wrecked. The Saboteur is one of those cult classics that everyone seems to have forgotten about, but it is actually one of the coolest open-world games from the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. It was the last game made by Pandemic Studios, who were the legends behind the original Star Wars Battlefront and Mercenaries, so it has that chaotic fun DNA in it. You play as an Irish race car driver named Sean Devlin who is stuck in Paris during World War II, and he is not a trained soldier or a super spy, he is just a tough mechanic who is really angry at the Nazis for killing his best friend. The story is a classic revenge tale, and Sean is such a distinct character because he is tough and drinks a lot and cracks jokes while blowing stuff up, which makes him way more interesting than the usual boring military heroes. The most famous thing about this game is the art style, because it uses this super unique system called the Will to Fight. When you enter a district of Paris that is under heavy Nazi control, the whole screen turns black and white like an old Noire movie or Sin City, and the only color you see is the bright red of the Nazi flags and armbands and the yellow of the streetlights. It looks absolutely incredible and stylish, and gives the game a dark mood that nothing else has. As you complete missions, and blow up sniper towers and inspire the citizens, the color literally bleeds back into the world in real time, so the sky turns blue and the grass turns green. It makes you feel like you're actually making a difference in the world because you can visually see your progress spreading across the map. The gameplay is basically a mix of Grand Theft Auto and Assassin's Creed, because you spend a lot of time climbing up buildings to escape patrols or find good sniping spots. You can climb almost anything in the city, including the Eiffel Tower, which is a huge moment in the game. Since Sean is a professional driver, the cars actually feel pretty heavy and fun to drive, and you can collect different vintage vehicles to store in your garage. There's also a stealth mechanic where you can sneak up on a soldier and take his uniform to wear as a disguise, so you can walk right into enemy bases. It's kind of funny because if you act suspicious or run too close to enemies, they will figure it out, and the disguise meter blows, which usually leads to a massive shootout. You have to admit the game has some jank because the climbing animations can be a bit stiff and the shooting is not as tight as modern games, but it has so much charm that you honestly do not even care. The atmosphere is top tier with smooth jazz music playing on the radio, and the cabaret clubs and the resistance fighters helping you out in the streets. It's really satisfying to run around planting dynamite on tanks and watch the explosions because the physics are pretty wild and chaotic. It's a game that just wants you to have fun and look cool doing it, and the unique black and white visual style alone makes it worth revisiting in 2026.
wolves must hold.
Far Cry Primal. Far Cry Primal is basically Far Cry thrown all the way back to the Stone Age. No guns, no cars, no radio towers, none of that usual Far Cry stuff. You're living in 10,000 BC in a world full of wild animals, rival tribes, fire everywhere, and people who survive by pure instinct. It feels rough, dirty, and kind of cool in its own way. You play as S.T.A.L.K.E.R, a hunter from the Wenja tribe. At the start, you're basically nobody, just a guy trying to make it through the day without getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. But things go bad, your group gets wiped, and now you're left alone in this giant prehistoric valley called Oros. Your whole mission turns into rebuilding your tribe from scratch. You rescue people, gather them, build huts, get specialists, and slowly turn this tiny village into something strong. The world is a huge open map, but instead of outposts filled with soldiers, it's camps full of angry tribes, beast dens, bonfires, and hostile wildlife that attacks you out of nowhere. Everything feels more raw. You hear distant roars, see tall grass moving, and you get that small oh crap feeling every time the sun goes down. The most unique thing about the game is the beast taming system. You can actually tame animals and have them fight with you. Wolves, bears, saber-tooths, jaguars, even a freaking badger that fights like it's possessed. Every animal has its own vibe. Some sneak, some tank hits, some run fast, you whistle and they come running to help. It gives the game this cool survival buddy feeling. Combat is all close range stuff. Spears, clubs, bows, slings. You craft everything with stones, wood, and animal parts. Nothing fancy. You light your spear on fire, throw it, watch someone run around screaming. It's chaotic, but in a fun caveman way. The bow in this game feels great too, heavy and satisfying. The story isn't super complicated, but it works for what the game is doing. It's more about survival than deep drama. You're trying to protect your people from two major enemy tribes. The Udam, who are brutal and tough and eat other tribes. The Azila, who are more advanced, use fire like crazy, and act like they're gods. S.T.A.L.K.E.R basically rises from being a lost hunter to this legendary beastmaster guy everyone fears. You get big moments, crazy rituals, weird drug visions, Far Cry tradition, boss fights, and tribal warfare that feels intense because everything's up close and personal. The vibes are strong too. The game uses a made-up prehistoric language that actually sounds believable. The lighting, the forests, the snowy mountains, the caves, everything feels alive. You hear wolves howling, owls screeching, people chanting around fires. It's like you're dropped into a Discovery Channel documentary, but someone handed you a flaming club. The game stands out because it isn't trying to be a modern shooter. It's just this wild survival adventure with a cool setting you don't see in games often. Some folks slept on it when it came out, but honestly, it aged well if you want something different, something where you feel the world more than you play it. Hitman Absolution is definitely the black sheep of the franchise, and hardcore fans were super angry when it came out because it changed the formula completely. But honestly, it is a fantastic action game if you stop comparing it to the others. The developers at IO Interactive decided to trade the big open sandbox maps for a more linear story-driven experience that feels like a gritty grindhouse movie from the 70s. You play as Agent 47, but this time he is on the run from his own agency, and he's trying to protect a teenage girl named Victoria, which makes the story way more personal and emotional than just taking contracts for money. The vibe is really dirty and seedy, and the villains are these disgusting, exaggerated characters like a gross cowboy arms dealer and a group of assassin nuns dressed in latex, which shows just how weird and bold the game is willing to be. The graphics were mind-blowing in 2012, and they actually hold up incredible well today because the lighting and the art style are just top tier. The first real level takes place in a Chinatown market, and the sheer amount of people on screen is insane, because there are hundreds of NPCs walking around and reacting to you, which makes the world feel alive and crowded. The game uses this really heavy cinematic style with lots of lens flare and bloom lighting that makes everything look dramatic and intense. It runs on the Glacier 2 engine, which is the early version of the tech that powers the modern Hitman trilogy, so the controls feel responsive and smooth compared to the older clunky games like Blood Money. The gameplay is a mix of stealth and action, but it is controversial because the disguise system is super punishing. If you dress up as a cop, every single other cop in the level will recognize you if you get too close, which forces you to sneak around more rather than hiding in plain sight. They added a feature called Instinct, which lets you see enemies through walls and predict their paths, and it also lets you use a move called point shooting, where you can pause time and tag a bunch of enemies to shoot them all at once in a cinematic burst. It makes you feel like an unstoppable super soldier, which fits the action movie vibe perfectly, even if it made the stealth purists mad. You have to appreciate how weird the levels are, because instead of just infiltrating a mansion, you are sneaking through a cornfield while escaping the police, or fighting your way through a wrestling match, or navigating a burning library. There's a really funny level where you can dress up as a giant chipmunk mascot to hide from bad guys, which is classic Hitman humor. It is a much more linear game where you move from room to room instead of exploring a huge map, but the pacing is tight and the shooting mechanics are actually some of the best in the series. It's a unique experiment that the developers never tried again, so it stands out as this weird, beautiful action game that is definitely worth a playthrough in 2026. L.A. Noire puts you in the shoes of Cole Phelps, a World War II veteran who becomes a cop in 1940s Los Angeles. The whole game is built like an old-school detective movie. It's not about running in guns blazing all the time. It's more about thinking, reading people, walking crime scenes, and slowly putting pieces together. You move through the police ranks, starting as a basic patrol officer, then going to traffic, homicide, vice, and finally arson. Each desk has its own vibe and its own type of cases. One mission you're dealing with car thefts, the next you're solving brutal murders, then suddenly you're tangled in corruption and big city politics. The big standout thing here is the facial capture tech. At the time, this was insane. Every actor's face was recorded in full detail, so when they talk, you see every twitch, every eye movement, every tiny smile or lie. The whole point is that you're supposed to read their faces. When you interview suspects and witnesses, you're basically doing real-time lie detection. Some people look away too much, some try harder to look calm, some crack under pressure. It's a simple system on paper, but the acting sells it. Most of the gameplay is split between investigating crime scenes, walking around, finding clues, flipping objects in your hand, checking pockets, footprints, blood trails, interrogations. This is where the acting and your judgment matter. Chases and shootouts, car chases through old LA streets, foot chases over rooftops, gunfights in factories or empty buildings, driving around 1940s Los Angeles. The city is huge and recreated with a lot of detail, from old cars to neon signs to jazz clubs. It's basically split between those things. The cases feel like episodes from a TV crime drama. You walk into a scene, inspect everything, find a clue that leads to another location, talk to someone there, get another lead, maybe it turns into a chase or a shootout. Then finally you come back and make an accusation. Some cases feel clean, some get messy, and sometimes you're not even sure you made the right call. The game likes to put doubt in your head. One thing that makes this game unique is the way it mixes the shiny look of 1940s LA with the ugly truth behind it. You see corruption everywhere. Crooked cops, shady business deals, abuse, drugs, cover-ups. Cole Phelps himself isn't perfect either. He has flaws, secrets, and the game slowly digs into his past and shows how his war trauma and guilt shaped him. The story gets heavier the deeper you go. What starts as solve the case, move on, slowly becomes this bigger picture of how broken the whole system is. You start realizing your job isn't just about catching criminals. Sometimes it's about dealing with what the city tries to hide. The atmosphere in the city is a big part of the experience. You hear old jazz music on the radio, see newspapers blow in the wind, drive past diners, theaters, back alleys, and rich Hollywood neighborhoods. It feels like you're walking through a time capsule. L.A. Noire isn't meant to be fast-paced. It's more like you're sitting inside a long detective show where your brain is always working a little bit. And the cool thing is, it does something no other detective game really nailed. It lets you judge people by their faces, not just by text choices.
We found a license plate matching our stolen vehicle in the shed. Add in the assortment of parts, and we can make Gabriel for a dozen other thefts. It's time to get serious, Anna.
You must ask these questions of Gabriel. I know nothing of these car parts.
Then tell us where he is. If your baby is born in prison, Anna, the corrections officers will take it from you. You will see your son or daughter through a metal grate for half an hour a week.
The start line is on 1st and Santa Fe. There is a spillway under the bridge that leads to the river. Many policia have wrecked trying to follow him.
We will put in a good word for you, Anna. As far as we're concerned, this sits with Gabriel.
Start line? That sounds like a street race to me. It's gotten out of hand this last year. No wonder Delgado has such an eye for final.
Batman Arkham Origins is the game that everyone loves to hate on just because it was made by WB Montreal instead of the original Rocksteady team, but honestly, it is the most underrated game in the entire series. It came out as a prequel to show us a younger and angrier Batman who is still learning how to be a hero, and he is way more brutal than the calm version we see in the later games. The vibe is absolutely perfect because it takes place on Christmas Eve during a massive blizzard, so the whole city is covered in snow and decorated with Christmas lights, which looks beautiful in a dark, gloomy way. The story is simple but effective because a villain named Black Mask puts a $50 million bounty on Batman's head and 8 of the deadliest assassins in the world fly into Gotham to kill him in one night. It feels like a stressful survival movie because you have guys like Deathstroke and Bane and Deadshot hunting you down while you were just trying to stop a riot. The gameplay is built on the same foundation as Arkham City, which means the free-flow combat is still the best in the business. You bounce between enemies, breaking bones and countering attacks, and it feels incredibly rhythmic and satisfying. They added a new weapon called the Shock Gloves, which let you punch through armor and shields with electricity, and it makes the combat feel faster and more aggressive because you don't have to worry about specific enemy types as much. The Predator stealth sections are also back and just as fun, where you hang from gargoyles and terrify bad guys before taking them out silently. They also upgraded the detective mode so you can actually reconstruct crime scenes by rewinding and fast-forwarding a holographic video to find clues, which makes you feel like an actual detective solving a mystery. You have to play this game just for the boss fights, because they are hands down the best in the entire Arkham franchise. The fight against Deathstroke is legendary because it is basically a martial arts dance, where you have to perfectly time your counters to block his staff attacks, and it tests your reflexes like crazy. There is also the situation with the voice acting, because the legendary Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill did not return for this one since the characters are supposed to be younger. Instead, you have Roger Craig Smith as Batman and Troy Baker as the Joker, and they actually do an incredible job of sounding like younger versions of those characters. The story digs deep into the relationship between Batman and the Joker and shows their very first meeting, which is super intense. It definitely had some bugs when it launched, but the city feels a bit empty because there are no civilians on the streets, but that is explained by the blizzard keeping everyone inside. The bridge that connects the two islands is annoying to cross because it takes forever, but once you unlock the fast travel jet, it gets way better. It is a solid Batman adventure that focuses on the boss battles and the Christmas atmosphere, and if you skipped it back in the day, you really need to give it a chance now.
I can fix the tower. Whatever you want. Just please don't hurt me.
Beyond Two Souls is one of those games that blurs the line between a video game and a Hollywood movie, and it is probably the most ambitious project Quantic Dream ever made. You play as Jodie Holmes, and she is connected to this invisible supernatural entity named Aiden. The story follows Jodie through her entire life, from being a scared little kid in a lab to a rebellious teenager, and finally a trained CIA agent, and it is an emotional roller coaster the whole way through. The gameplay is really unique because you are constantly switching controls between Jodie and the ghost entity Aiden. Playing as Jodie is pretty standard adventure game stuff where you walk around and talk to people and do quick-time events during action scenes, but playing as Aiden is where the real fun happens. You can detach from Jodie's body and fly through walls and ceilings to scout ahead or listen to conversations in other rooms. You can also interact with the world like a poltergeist by knocking over water bottles or smashing windows or possessing enemies to make them attack each other. There is a famous level early in the game where Jodie goes to a birthday party and the other kids are mean to her, and you get the choice to use Aiden to completely wreck the house and get revenge, which is just so satisfying to play. One thing you have to know is that the story was originally told out of order, so it would jump from her being an adult back to her being a kid, and then to her being a homeless runaway. It was kind of confusing for some people, but the newer versions on PC and PS4 let you play it in chronological order, which honestly makes the story flow way better. The game has some really weird pacing because one minute you are sneaking through a war zone in Africa, and the next minute you're living on a Navajo ranch fighting ancient spirits in the desert. That desert chapter is totally random and feels like a different game, but it just adds to the strange charm of the whole experience. You also have to give it credit for the homeless chapter, because it slows the game down completely and forces you to survive on the streets in the winter. You have to beg for money to buy food and try to find a warm place to sleep, and it is a surprisingly deep and sad moment that most games would never try to do. The combat is not really about skill, since it is mostly just pushing the stick in the direction Jodie is moving, but it looks really cool and cinematic like a Jason Bourne movie. It is definitely a game that wants you to focus on the story and the acting rather than high scores, and even though the writing gets a little crazy at the end, it is a journey you will not forget. The Walking Dead by Telltale is one of those games that hits harder than you expect. It's not about flashy action or wild graphics. It's all about characters, choices, and that feeling in your gut when something terrible is about to happen. It's set in the same world as the TV show and comics, but it follows its own original story, so you don't need to know anything beforehand. You play as Lee Everett, a guy with a rough past. The game starts with him being taken to prison in the back of a police car, and then suddenly everything goes to hell because the zombie outbreak hits. The whole world falls apart around him in minutes. Lee escapes and meets a little girl named Clementine, who becomes the heart and soul of the entire series. The whole game basically becomes about Lee trying to protect Clementine in a world where people are often more dangerous than the zombies. She's alone, scared, hiding in her house when you find her, and that early moment hits you because Lee doesn't just save her, he decides to take responsibility for her when nobody else will. The gameplay is simple but very tight. Talking to people, making choices that matter, exploring small areas, quick time moments during fights or escapes, solving small puzzles here and there. The magic is in the dialogue choices. You don't just pick lines to be nice or be mean. Everything you say changes how people trust you, how they treat Clementine, and even who will die later on. Some choices feel tiny in the moment, but later they come back in ways you didn't expect. And the game does a great job stressing you out without cheap tricks. You're always making these no perfect option choices. For example, who do you save when both people are in danger? What do you tell Clementine when she asks something painful? Who do you side with when the group starts falling apart? When do you lie? When do you tell the truth? The characters are the core of the experience. Every person you meet feels human, flawed, scared, and trying their best. Kenny, Lily, Ben, Carly, Doug, Chuck, everyone has their own story, their own trauma, their own breaking point. And the game isn't afraid to kill characters in ways that feel sudden and realistic, not dramatic or over the top. The writing is strong because it's grounded. People yell, cry, panic, blame each other, break down, apologize, make mistakes. It feels like a group of strangers trying to hold a broken world together by sheer will. The zombies are there, sure, but they're more like the constant pressure that pushes everybody to their limits. This game basically put Telltale on the map and showed everyone that story games can be powerful without huge budgets or crazy action. Quantum Break is one of the coolest and weirdest experiments in gaming history, and it comes from the maniacs at Remedy Entertainment who made Max Payne and Alan Wake. They tried something that nobody else has really dared to do, which is combining a high-budget video game with a live-action TV show. You play as Jack Joyce, who is played by the actor Shawn Ashmore, and he goes to visit his friend Paul Serene at a university for a time travel experiment. Obviously, everything goes horribly wrong, and time itself starts to break down, which gives Jack these insane time manipulation powers while his friend Paul becomes the villain. It is such a unique setup because you play a chapter of the game, and then you literally sit back and watch a 20-minute episode of a TV show that changes based on the choices you made in the game. The gameplay is actually super underrated because people tried to play it like a generic cover shooter like Gears of War, but that is the wrong way to do it. You are supposed to be aggressive because your powers let you dominate the battlefield. You can freeze enemies in a time bubble and pump it full of bullets, so when the bubble pops, they all hit at once and send the guy flying. You can also zip around the room instantly or create a time shield to block bullets while you reload. It feels incredibly fast and fluid once you get the hang of it, and it is basically the prototype for the combat they perfected later in their game Control. Visually, this game is a total masterpiece, and it is crazy that it came out in 2016 because the particle effects are still some of the best you will ever see. When time breaks down, the world freezes and gets all distorted with these jagged geometric shapes, and objects get stuck in mid-air. You walk through these frozen scenes called stutters, where an explosion is paused in the middle of going off, and you can walk around and look at the debris floating in the air. It is a trippy visual style that makes you feel like reality is shattering around you, and the Northlight engine handles all the lighting and destruction perfectly. The story deals with serious sci-fi concepts like closed time loops and the end of the world, but it stays grounded because of the acting. You have these moments called junction points where you actually play as the villain, Paul Serene, and decide how the bad guys are going to handle the situation. It gives you a reason to replay the game to see the different outcomes and different TV show scenes. It was a massive risk for Xbox to fund something this weird, but it is an unforgettable ride that totally holds up today.
Good morning.
Yeah. I guess I should go find Paul.
Battlefield Hardline is easily the most hated game in the entire series by the hardcore fans. But looking back at it now, it is actually a super fun and unique single-player experience. The reason people were mad is because they wanted another big military war game, but instead we got a cops and robbers story made by Visceral Games, who are the legends that made Dead Space. It does not feel like a traditional Battlefield game at all, because instead of a soldier invading a country, you play as a detective named Nick Mendoza fighting the drug war in Miami. The whole game is presented exactly like a TV police drama, where every level is called an episode, and when you quit the game and come back, it literally plays a clip that says previously on Battlefield Hardline. It is a really cool style that makes you feel like you are binge-watching a high-budget show on Netflix with car chases and corrupt cops and prison breaks. The gameplay is totally different from Call of Duty or the other Battlefields because you actually get rewarded for not shooting people. You have a mechanic where you can sneak up on bad guys and flash your badge to make them freeze, and then you can arrest them and handcuff them to the ground. It creates this really tense stealth loop where you're trying to take down a whole room of criminals without firing a single bullet, so you can get more points to unlock better guns and gear. You also get a scanner that lets you tag enemies through walls and find evidence to solve side cases, which adds a nice layer of detective work to the usual running and gunning. Since it's a police game, you get access to some really fun gadgets that change how you move around the map, like a grappling hook to climb up buildings and a zipline crossbow to slide across gaps. The shooting is still built on the Frostbite engine, so it feels punchy and loud, and the destructible environments are awesome because walls and cover get shredded during firefights. There are some crazy set pieces, like fighting through a hurricane in a shopping mall, or escaping a massive grow house in the swamps while driving an airboat. The driving is a huge part of the game, and it feels surprisingly fast and arcade-like because you are usually in muscle cars or police cruisers instead of slow tanks. The graphics are honestly still really impressive, especially the facial animations during the cutscenes. It is definitely weird to see the Battlefield name on a game where you are arresting guys for selling weed, but if you ignore the title and just play it as a standalone action cop movie, it is a blast. It's a shame we will probably never get a sequel because Visceral Games got shut down, but this game remains a hidden gem that tried something bold and different.
Hey, slow down.
Okay.
Is there a problem, ma'am?
Lid doesn't fucking fit.
Well, good luck, ma'am.
Fuck you!
You want me to call for backup, Mendoza?
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed II is honestly the greatest game in the entire franchise, and it is the reason why everybody fell in love with this series in the first place. This game was a massive jump from the first one because it took everything that was clunky about the original and made it feel fast, smooth, and incredibly fun. You play as Ezio Auditore de Firenze, who is the absolute best character in the history of Assassin's Creed, and the whole game is his origin story. It starts when he's a teenager and his family gets betrayed and killed, which kicks off his long personal quest for revenge against the Templars in Renaissance Italy. The setting is unbelievably beautiful and vibrant because you get to explore huge Italian cities like Florence and Venice, which are just packed with historical detail and famous landmarks. You can climb literally every single building, including cathedrals and bell towers, and the parkour system is so much smoother than it feels like Ezio is actually flowing across the rooftops. The combat is incredibly satisfying because they added tons of new weapons and moves, so you can use 2 hidden blades at once or use a poison blade to make enemies go crazy and kill their friends. The game is just packed with style, and it makes you feel like an absolute badass as you take out the bad guys. A massive feature they added in this game is the ability to rebuild your family's old home, which is a huge villa called Monteregioni. You spend the entire game collecting money and investing it into renovating the bank and the shops and the armor displays. The more you spend on your home base, the more money it generates for you over time, so it gives you a super fun reason to explore and loot treasure chests. Plus, you are best friends with Leonardo da Vinci, who is the greatest inventor in history, and he is the guy who upgrades all your secret assassin gear. He is the one who puts the second hidden blade on your arm and even builds you a wild flying machine for one of the most iconic missions in the entire series. This game just completely perfected the classic Assassin's Creed formula before the series got huge and weird. The music is absolutely fantastic and cinematic, and the story is focused on brotherhood and finding lost secrets, which gives it a huge emotional weight. It is still the gold standard for historical open-world games, and if you want to experience the peak of the Assassin's Creed saga, then this is the one you need to revisit in 2026.
Stardy! You think you can threaten me? I'll give you nothing! You want my children? Take them! I have the instrument to make more!
When you change your mind, they'll be in the village outside the city!
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is straight up legendary, and it is the game that proved that shooters could be just as big and insane as a summer blockbuster movie. Infinity Ward was at the absolute top of their game when they made this, and the campaign is pure, non-stop adrenaline from the second you start playing. The story takes place right after the first Modern Warfare, and things have gone completely off the rails because the Russians have somehow managed to invade American soil. You play as a bunch of different soldiers and commandos, including the classic hero Soap McTavish and the super mysterious and cool character Ghost, who wears that awesome skull mask. The best part about this game is how over-the-top and cinematic the action is, because you are literally fighting to defend the suburbs and the White House in Washington, D.C. You have a famous mission called Wolverines, where you are fighting in the middle of a destroyed fast food place and an empty shopping mall, which felt absolutely wild to play back in 2009. You also have missions where you are climbing giant snowy mountains or infiltrating an oil rig in the middle of the ocean, which just keeps throwing unique scenarios at you every 5 minutes. The shooting mechanics are super tight and fast, and everything feels snappy because this is the peak of that arcade shooter era. The graphics were absolutely insane for the time, and even now the pacing and polish of the campaign are unmatched. It is a short experience, maybe 6 or 7 hours total, but it never slows down and it never wastes your time with boring filler missions. The story is intense and deals with global terrorism and betrayal and massive stakes, which keeps you completely hooked. This game has a few scenes that were super controversial when it came out because the developers were trying to push the limits of what a game could even show. But those moments just prove how much impact the story had on people. If you're looking for a game that defined an entire era and gives you pure high-octane action without all the complicated open-world stuff, you have to revisit this one. It is a masterpiece of linear shooting, and it will remind you why Captain Price and Ghost became 2 of the most iconic video game characters ever created.
Houston, we're not scheduled for any satellite launches today, are we?
ISS Houston, stand by. We may have a problem here.
Houston, this is ISS.
GTA 4 is kind of a big deal for the series because it really tried to take the whole open world thing to a more real level. You play as Niko Bellic, this guy who comes to Liberty City, basically a super detailed New York City clone, hoping to escape his past and maybe find a better life. Of course, things don't go smoothly and you get pulled into all this crime, debt, and shady deals right away. The story is one of the stronger ones in the GTA franchise, at least in terms of tone, because it's less about crazy over-the-top antics and more about Niko's struggles, loyalty, betrayal, and trying to survive in the city that doesn't care about him. The characters feel more grounded than in some other GTA games, and a lot of the humor and dialogue is really sharp, even if it's a little dark sometimes. The gameplay is classic GTA, driving, shooting, and running around the city, but GTA 4 has this weird thing with its physics that makes cars feel heavier, more realistic. Some people love it because it makes driving a bit more tactical, but others find it frustrating because getting from point A to point B can feel slow and clunky compared to GTA 5. The open world is huge and detailed. Liberty City feels alive with pedestrians, traffic, events happening on the streets, and side missions that aren't just filler. You can run taxi missions, do vigilante stuff, or even play pool and go bowling, which adds some flavor. But GTA 4 also has its flaws. The driving and shooting controls, especially when it first came out, felt awkward to a lot of players, and the game's pacing can drag sometimes. Missions aren't always super exciting, and a few of them feel repetitive. Still, there's a lot to love. The city feels alive, the story's more grounded and emotional than people give it credit for, and there's this constant sense of tension where you feel like every choice and every interaction matters. It's not perfect, and it can be frustrating at times, but GTA 4 has a certain vibe that makes it stick. Like you're really walking the streets of Liberty City and living Nico's life, good and bad, even if it's messy and imperfect.
Come on, Nico, this is stupid. All for a woman? We should not throw everything away for one girl.
This is principle. We do this because we will not be stepped upon. By doing nothing, we let Vlad take everything from us. He takes our pride.
Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is kind of insane when you really think about it, because it's this huge open world game that still feels like a really well crafted story, which is not easy to pull off. You play as Venom Snake, who wakes up from a 9-year coma after his old base, Mother Base, gets destroyed in an attack. The story kicks in slow at first, but it's layered, with this mix of revenge, betrayal, and just all the shady stuff that goes on in private armies and secret organizations. It's interesting because the story isn't just in cutscenes. Sometimes you hear it through cassette tapes, sometimes from your soldiers at the base, and sometimes it's just in the environment, like a ruined village or an abandoned outpost that tells you something without words. The gameplay is huge. The world itself is massive, and the game doesn't force you down one path, which makes every mission feel different depending on how you approach it. You can crawl through sand, climb mountains, take helicopters to drop into enemy areas, or just roll in with guns and vehicles. There's a lot of attention to detail in how the world reacts to. If it rains, mud slows you down. Sandstorms mess with visibility, and guards talk to each other in a way that makes it feel alive. You're constantly thinking about your plan, but you also have freedom, which is pretty rare for a game of this scale. Then there's the whole Mother Base thing. You build it, recruit soldiers, send them on missions, and customize weapons and gear. It's not just some side thing, they actually interact with each other, and it changes the dynamic of the game. You start to care about your soldiers because they feel like real people, and there's a subtle story woven in their little interactions. You also get to develop cool gadgets, things like decoys, mine launchers, or rideable vehicles. And you can modify weapons to fit your playstyle, which is way more satisfying than just picking up a gun and shooting. What's really striking about Phantom Pain is how it balances big action moments with quiet ones. There are missions where you're literally alone in the desert at night, thinking about what you're doing and the people you've lost, and then other times it's pure chaos with explosions and helicopters flying around. The game also has a weird, unique history behind it. It was made after Hideo Kojima split from Konami, and you can kind of feel that tension in the way the story touches on betrayal, loyalty, and obsession. Some parts of the story even feel like commentary on the gaming industry itself, which is wild if you notice it. The soundtrack, sound design, and visuals are nuts. Footsteps in sand, enemy chatter, the wind blowing through mountains, it all pulls you in without being over the top. There's a day-night cycle and weather system that actually matters, like guards behave differently, and you can use that to your advantage, or just let it mess with your plans. And the sheer scale of the world, combined with all the little details, makes it feel like you're living in this place, not just playing a level. By the end, Phantom Pain sticks with you, because it's not just a game you finish and forget. There's a sense of melancholy, of what war does to people, and the story doesn't wrap things up neatly. You remember moments, little choices, and even failures. It's one of those games that rewards patience and attention, and it's easy to get lost in it for hours. It's kind of exhausting at times, but in the best way, because the world actually feels alive and dangerous and full of stuff to do.
Analysis complete.
The Darkness 2 is one of those shooters that just completely throws normal rules out the window, and it is a pure blast of violent, crazy fun. The first thing you notice is the art style, because the developers at Digital Extremes decided to make the whole game look exactly like a living comic book, which is perfect since the game is based on the Top Cow comic series. You play as Jackie S.T.A.L.K.E.R, who is a mob boss in New York, and he is also the wielder of the ancient demonic power called the Darkness. After a failed hit on his life, the Darkness power comes roaring back, and now Jackie has to fight a cult called the Brotherhood, who are trying to steal the power for themselves. The gameplay is what makes this game so sick, because you get to quad wield. That means you are running around with 2 normal guns, like pistols or shotguns, and you also have 2 massive demon arms sticking out of your back. Those demon arms are the best part, because you can use one to grab a guy and hold him in the air while you shoot him with your pistol, and use the other arm to slice him in half or throw a car door at him. It is incredibly satisfying and fast-paced, because the game really wants you to move forward and get into chaotic fights using all 4 of your weapons at once. You also have to remember that the Darkness cannot stand light, so you are constantly running from streetlights and muzzle flashes, or using the demon arms to smash light fixtures to keep the shadows around you. The story is a cool mix of mob drama and supernatural horror, but it has this really sharp dark humor too. Jackie has a sidekick called the Darkling, who is this little annoying goblin imp who follows you around and cracks the funniest and most inappropriate jokes. The game also messes with your head, because there are sequences where you are suddenly pulled into a psychiatric asylum that may or may not be real, and you have to question everything that's happening around you. It is a really unique way to tell the story, and it gives the game a great emotional weight that most shooters skip. The combination of the cel-shaded look with all the gore and the crazy executions just gives the game an aesthetic that nothing else can match. It is a perfect game to revisit if you are tired of the usual military shooters and just want something that feels totally over the top, fast, and wildly creative.
Yes, hey.
You must be Venus. I'm Jackie, Vinny's friend.
Well, any friend of Vinny's is a friend of mine. Why don't you come up to my room? I think I could arrange something special just for you. Follow me, handsome.
I was raised fucked up with that.
I think I just brought you too.
Murdered Soul Suspect is one of the most unique single-player games ever made, because the entire hook is that you die in the very first minute of the game, and then you have to solve your own murder as a ghost. It is a straight-up supernatural detective noir mystery that trades in complicated combat for pure atmosphere and clue solving. You play as Ronan O'Connor, who is a detective with a troubled past, and he gets thrown out a window and killed by a serial killer known as the Bell Killer in Salem, Massachusetts. Since he is killed before his time, Ronan gets stuck as a ghost, and he cannot rest until he figures out who killed him and why. The gameplay is what makes this game so cool, because since you are a ghost, you can literally walk through walls and pass through almost any solid object, which totally changes how you explore the environment. You spend the whole game possessing living people to read their minds and figure out what they know, or subtly influencing them to get them to remember a clue. The main loop is going to a crime scene and gathering evidence like notes and objects, and then you piece them together in your mind to make a deduction about the killer. It is a chill and thoughtful game that lets you focus on being a detective instead of just constantly shooting bad guys. The atmosphere is absolutely top tier because the game takes place in Salem, which is already known for its history of witches and the supernatural, so the setting just fits perfectly. The city is dark and rainy and moody, and you're constantly seeing the ghostly remains of other dead people or weird supernatural portals that give you hints about the spirit world. You do run into these shadow demons sometimes that will try to drag your soul away, and those encounters turn into little stealth puzzles where you have to sneak up behind them and banish them. The combat against the demons is pretty simple and not the best part of the game, but it is just enough to break up the clue finding sections. Honestly, the game got some bad reviews because the puzzles are kind of easy and the demon fights are basic, but the story and the dark vibe are what carry the whole experience. It is a shorter game that you can definitely beat in a weekend, and it is perfect if you just want to sink into a really dark and unique mystery where you get to use weird supernatural powers to solve a crime. You will stick with it just to figure out who the Bell Killer is and see the final twist. Vampyr is one of those games that really sticks with you because it mixes this dark, emotional story with a gameplay loop that makes you feel constantly torn. You play as Dr. Jonathan Reed, a doctor in London during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, which already sets this really grim, heavy tone for the game. Right off the bat, Reed becomes a vampire, so now you're stuck balancing this new monstrous hunger with your role as a doctor trying to help people. The game makes it clear that every choice matters. Every time you feed on someone, it affects the world around you, and sometimes the consequences aren't obvious until much later. People might go missing, crime might rise, or certain characters could disappear entirely. So there's this constant tension between surviving as a vampire and trying to retain your humanity. That's really what makes Vampyr feel different from other action RPGs. It's not just about leveling up and fighting, it's about the moral weight behind your actions. The combat is a mix of melee, ranged, and vampire powers, and it can be pretty fun when you get into it. You've got swords, stakes, and guns, but also powers like dashing across the battlefield, summoning mist, or freezing enemies, which makes fights feel varied if you pay attention to what works best against different enemy types. That said, the combat isn't flawless. Some fights can feel repetitive, especially in the middle of the game, and boss battles sometimes rely more on spongy health bars than actual strategy. But overall, the combination of powers, gear, and leveling makes it feel like you're customizing your vampire in a way that fits your playstyle. You can focus on raw strength, stealthy attacks, or powers that let you control the battlefield. The RPG and choice systems are where Vampyr really shines. Every character you meet has a story, and the game keeps track of their relationships, secrets, and even how important they are to the community. Feeding on someone might make your life easier in the short term, giving you more XP and stronger abilities, but it could also destabilize a whole area of the city. Certain districts can get darker or lose key characters, which can even affect the ending you get. It's not just good or bad choices, it's shades of gray, and that makes you think carefully about what you do. The writing can get a bit hit or miss at times, and some side characters don't get fully fleshed out, but the main story and emotional weight are genuinely engaging. The world of Vampyr is another highlight. London is dark, rainy, and foggy, which makes the atmosphere feel dense and oppressive, perfectly matching the tone of the Spanish flu pandemic. Streets are empty or filled with scared, sick people, gangs are roaming around, and there's this constant feeling that the city is barely holding itself together. The visuals, sound design, and music all reinforce that sense of unease. You'll often hear coughing citizens, distant screams, or the quiet dripping of rain on cobblestone streets, which just makes exploring feel alive. It's a world that rewards paying attention to small details like overhearing conversations or discovering secrets in back alleys, which makes it feel lived in rather than just a backdrop for action. That said, Vampyr has its flaws, and it's worth being honest about them. The pacing can be uneven, there are stretches where you're grinding through similar side missions, or walking long distances between story beats, and the combat can start to feel stale over time. Some of the character interactions and dialogue don't hit emotionally as hard as they should, and a few narrative threads feel unfinished or rushed. Even with the morality system, some choices don't feel as impactful as you hope until much later, which can be frustrating if you're trying to see immediate consequences. But even with those flaws, the game's combination of story, choices, and world building keeps you invested. By the end, Vampyr isn't just about fighting monsters or leveling up, it's about living in a world where every decision has consequences, where surviving as a vampire is in direct conflict with helping people, and where the city itself almost becomes a character. It's dark, messy, and not always perfect, but that's part of its charm. The tension, the moral dilemmas, and the atmosphere make it a game you remember long after you put the controller down, even if some moments frustrate you or feel incomplete.
Nope.
Prototype is a game that basically lets you live out your fantasy of being an absolute super monster that destroys everything in sight, and it is one of the best power trips in gaming history. The developers at Radical Entertainment went all out to make a game about speed, chaos, and pure destruction, and it is just a non-stop good time. You play as Alex Mercer, who wakes up in a morgue in New York City with total amnesia, but he has these insane powers where he can shapeshift his body into deadly weapons. The story is a mystery where Alex has to figure out who he is and why the entire city has been quarantined by the military because of a massive virus outbreak. The gameplay is what sells this game because your movement is absolutely incredible. You can run straight up the side of any skyscraper, including the Empire State Building, in just a few seconds, and then glide across the entire city faster than any helicopter or car. It is just so much fun to ignore traffic and jump 100 stories in the air. The combat is incredibly brutal and messy because you can change your arm into huge claws, a giant blade, or hammer fists that slam into the ground and launch cars. You are constantly fighting the military who are throwing tanks and missiles at you, and also hordes of giant infected monsters. The main mechanic of the game is called consuming people, because Alex needs to eat living things to heal himself and get stronger. When you consume a soldier or a civilian, you instantly absorb their memories and their identity, which lets you disguise yourself as them to sneak into military bases. This is how you upgrade your powers and piece together the story, so you are constantly jumping around and grabbing specific people to learn new skills. You can go from being a regular guy to having a giant whip arm that takes down helicopters in just a few seconds, which makes you feel like an unstoppable god of chaos. The game did get some flack because the color palette is kind of bland and gray, but that dark, messy look actually fits the whole Biohazard and destruction vibe perfectly. The story can get a little complicated, but honestly, you're playing this game to run up a building, rip a helicopter out of the sky with a whip, and then throw a tank at a military base. If you want a game that focuses entirely on making you feel like the biggest monster in the city, then Prototype is the one you need to revisit.
Now I gotta kill them too.
God of War 3 is absolutely bonkers, and it is the kind of game that screams pure revenge and spectacle right from the second you press start. This is the final chapter of Kratos' original Greek mythology saga, and he is not messing around anymore because he literally brings the massive titans out of the underworld to climb Mount Olympus and wipe out every single Greek god. The sheer scale of this game is ridiculous, because you are not just fighting normal-sized bad guys, you are fighting gods the size of skyscrapers, and sometimes you are climbing and running across the back of an actual titan while he is scaling the mountain. The gameplay perfected the classic hack-and-slash action of the first two games, and it feels incredibly fast and brutal. Kratos is a total tank, and his main weapons are the Blades of Chaos, which are those cool chains attached to his arms. But he gets a bunch of sick new weapons too. You rip weapons off of the gods you kill, like the Claws of Hades, or the Cestus Gauntlets, which are these huge metal punching gloves. The combat relies on doing massive combos, and then finishing the enemy off with these incredible and super violent quick-time events where you are tearing things apart. It is one of the goriest games of the PS3 era, and the developers at Santa Monica Studio really leaned into the brutality. The boss fights are some of the most famous in gaming history, because the first fight against Poseidon is just an insane sequence of cinematic chaos. You also get to rip the head off the sun god Helios, and then use his head as a lantern and a flashlight, which is one of the most metal gadgets ever put into a video game. The visuals absolutely push the PlayStation 3 to its limits, and everything from the character models to the environment details looks gorgeous and incredibly detailed. Even though Kratos is just filled with blind rage and revenge, the story does a great job of making you feel the weight of his actions as he brings the apocalypse down on the world. If you are looking for pure, unfiltered epic action, where you fight mythological monsters and gods and throw them around like toys, then this is the game you need to revisit. It is the perfect conclusion to the angry Kratos story, and it is a masterpiece of over-the-top Greek mythology carnage. Mirror's Edge is one of those experimental masterpieces that still stands out because nobody else has really managed to copy its style and mechanics. This game came from the developers at DICE, who usually only make massive war games like Battlefield, but they decided to make a first-person parkour game, and it is absolutely genius. You play as Faith Connors, who is a runner in this super clean, white, dystopian city where all communication is tracked and monitored by the government. Runners are basically couriers who use the rooftops to deliver messages outside of the surveillance network. The unique thing about this game is the first-person perspective for the parkour. You are running, jumping, vaulting, and wall running all from Faith's eyes, and the feeling of speed and momentum is honestly unmatched. When you hit a perfect sequence of moves and you are flowing across the rooftops without slowing down, it is one of the most satisfying feelings in gaming. The whole game is designed around getting into that flow state. It uses a mechanic called runner vision, where the ideal path you should take is highlighted in bright red, which helps guide you without cluttering up the clean aesthetic. The visual style is absolutely iconic because the whole city is minimalist, super bright white and clean with stark blue skies, and the only color accents are the red lines that show you where to go. It makes the world feel cold and oppressive, but also beautiful at the same time. The combat is simple because the game actually punishes you for trying to fight back too much. The best way to deal with the guards is to use your momentum to disarm them and steal their gun and then throw it away immediately because Faith is not supposed to be a killer. You have to admit the game can be a little clunky sometimes, especially when you miss a jump and plummet 50 stories to the ground, but that just adds to the tension of the height. It is a short game, but it is so focused on delivering that one perfect feeling of free running across the rooftops that it is totally worth revisiting. If you want a game that feels like a breath of fresh air and looks unlike anything else, this is the one. Sunset Overdrive is a game that just refuses to take itself seriously, and it is honestly one of the most ridiculously fun and chaotic open world games ever made. It came from the insane minds at Insomniac Games, who are famous for making Ratchet & Clank, so you know the weapons are going to be absolutely wild. The story is that a giant energy drink company called Fizzco messes up the launch of its new drink called Overcharge, and it instantly turns almost everyone in Sunset City into super violent mutants called ODs. You play as a janitor who survives the outbreak, and you're basically the last normal person in a city full of neon colors, punk rock vibes, and monsters. The gameplay is what sells this game because you are never supposed to stop moving. The city is your playground, and you are constantly grinding on power lines and railings, bouncing off cars and vents, and running along walls to get around. You have to keep this chain of movement going because the faster you move and the more tricks you pull, the more powerful your amps get, which are basically upgrades for your weapons and abilities. It is a shooter where traversing the environment is just as important as the combat, and when you are grinding across the rooftop while shooting enemies below, the flow feels absolutely incredible. Since it is an Insomniac game, the weapons are totally insane. Forget boring assault rifles because you are shooting vinyl records at bad guys, or using a device called the acid sprinkler that sprays acid everywhere. The most famous weapon is the TNT Eddy, which shoots teddy bears strapped with dynamite, and that just sums up the whole ridiculous mood of the game. The visuals are super bright and colorful, and the game embraces this punk rock aesthetic, which is a breath of fresh air compared to all the dreary brown and gray post-apocalyptic games. The whole game breaks the fourth wall all the time, and the humor is relentless and self-aware. When you die, your respawn animation is a different gag every time, like you emerge from a portal or a coffin, and it always makes you laugh. The missions are always super creative and over the top, and it is one of those games where you can just jump in and cause pure chaos for hours. If you want a fun game that lets you turn off your brain and just skate and shoot giant teddy bears, then you need to revisit this colorful madness. The Evil Within is an old-school survival horror that is straight-up freaky. This game is important because it was directed by Shinji Mikami, who is the legendary creator of the Resident Evil series, and he basically went back to his roots to make the tense, limited-resource horror that everyone missed. You play as Detective Sebastian Castellanos, and the story starts with him investigating a mass murder at a mental hospital, but he quickly gets pulled into a shared psychological nightmare world where nothing makes sense. The whole game messes with your head because the environment keeps changing and morphing into new, horrifying locations constantly. The core gameplay is intense survival horror because you are almost always running out of bullets and desperately trying to conserve your resources. The combat is intentionally clumsy and difficult because you are just a regular guy fighting off these insane, grotesque monsters, so every single encounter is stressful. The most important mechanic is the match system because when you finally manage to put a monster down, you have to use a match to burn the body, or else it will just get back up and attack you again. Since matches are also super rare, you're constantly making the difficult choice of whether you should burn one body or save it in the hope of grouping 3 dead bodies together later to save your matches. The atmosphere is absolutely disturbing and gross, and the game throws some truly messed up enemies at you. You have to fight creatures like the Keeper, who's a giant monster with a safe for a head and a hammer covered in barbed wire, and he represents the stress of hoarding resources. There's also a fast spider-like creature called Laura, who is terrifying and relentless and always chases you through tight spaces. The game is packed with deadly traps everywhere like tripwires and spike plates, so you also have to focus on stealth and disarming the environment just to survive. It got some flack when it launched for running a little rough and being incredibly difficult, but that brutal challenge is actually what makes the game so rewarding. The story is pretty confusing and abstract, but it is worth playing just for the sheer tension and the incredible creature design. It is a true return to form for old school horror, and if you want to feel that panic of only having 2 bullets left, then this is the one you need to revisit. Firewatch is one of those indie darlings that hit right in the feels and redefined what people expected from a narrative adventure game back in 2016. People try to call it a walking sim, and okay, fine, it is, but it is the best walking sim, hands down, because the entire experience is built around this incredible atmosphere and dialogue system. The dev team, Campo Santo, were basically industry veterans who came out of places like Telltale and Cry Entertainment, so they knew exactly how to make a story land hard, even if they only used a few core mechanics. The first thing that hits you is the visual identity, and it is absolutely sick. The artist, Ollie Moss, gave the game the stunning, stylized look that uses these incredible warm colors, especially the oranges and deep reds of the sunsets and the fire haze. It's supposed to be Shoshone National Forest in Wyoming in 1989, and the world they created just looks like a beautiful painting, but you are the only human moving through it. This level of visual style combined with the powerful feeling of complete isolation is what sets the entire mood for the mystery. The core of the game is the radio dialogue between you, Henry, and your supervisor, Delilah. Henry, who is voiced by Rich Sommer from Mad Men, takes this job to escape heavy personal baggage, and his only connection to the outside world is Delilah, who is miles away in another tower. Their conversations are the main engine of the game. It feels so natural and real, not like typical video game dialogue. You use a physical paper map and a compass to navigate the huge open forest, which is great for immersion, and the choices you make on the radio are the only gameplay interactions that really matter because they shape your entire relationship with Delilah and change how she reacts to you later. It starts out super peaceful, just you hiking and reporting smoke, but the game slowly builds this incredible sense of paranoia and dread. You start finding weird fences, locked caves, and strange notes, and you begin to realize someone is listening to your private radio calls. That shift from a chill nature escape to a full-blown psychological thriller is masterful, and it gets genuinely tense because you're all alone out there with no backup. It is a tight, focused story that only runs for about 4 hours, but every single minute is focused on perfecting that atmosphere and those conversations. Yeah, the ending is super divisive because some people expected a huge, literal sci-fi twist, but the game is actually about personal mystery and human choices, and that journey is absolutely worth the price of admission.
Oh, look, they decided to have a campfire, too.
You know, they color-coded the fire danger signs in case people were illiterate, but I guess that doesn't take into account just plain stupid, does it?
Prince of Persia, Sands of the Time. So Prince of Persia Sands of Time came out in 2003, and honestly, this game still rocks. The main thing that makes it special is that rewind time mechanic with the dagger. You mess up a jump, and instead of starting over, you just rewind a few seconds and try again. It's such a simple idea, but it works perfectly and keeps the game from getting frustrating. The movement in this game was insane for its time. The prince just flows through levels, running on walls, swinging on poles, doing flips and all that parkour stuff. Even now, it looks smooth and feels good to control. A lot of games from 2003 are clunky as hell when you go back to them, but this one still plays great because the core mechanics are solid. The whole game takes place in this massive palace, and you're basically solving these big environmental puzzles. You gotta figure out how to get from one area to another using all your moves. The level design is really smart, and when you nail a tough section, it feels awesome. The palace looks cool too, with all that Persian architecture and style that gives it its own vibe. Combat is pretty basic, but it gets the job done. You fight these sand monster things, and you can slow down time or do acrobatic attacks. It's not super deep, but it looks stylish and breaks up the platforming nicely. The dagger powers make you feel badass, which is what matters. What really makes this game stand out is the story presentation. The prince narrates everything like he's telling you this tale, and it just works so well. His voice is great, and the writing is actually good. When you die and rewind, he'll say stuff like, "No wait, that didn't happen," which is a clever way to tie the gameplay into the story. His relationship with Farah develops throughout the game, and you end up caring about both characters. The atmosphere is top-notch. The music has that Middle Eastern sound that fits perfectly. The palace feels mysterious and ancient with all these traps and secrets everywhere. It just sucks you in and makes you want to keep exploring. Yeah, the graphics are super dated now, textures are blurry and models are basic, but the gameplay holds up so well that you stop noticing after a while. The platforming is responsive, controls are tight, and the puzzles are clever. That's what matters more than fancy graphics anyway. The game respects your brain too. It doesn't spam markers telling you exactly where to go. You gotta look around and figure out the path yourself, which feels way more rewarding. The pacing is solid, no filler or padding, just a focused adventure that takes about 10 hours. This game basically invented the parkour action game formula that tons of games copied later. Assassin's Creed took massive inspiration from it. But even with all those games that came after, Sands of Time still holds up on its own because the execution is just that good. Playing it now is still fun as hell. The movement feels great, rewinding time never gets old, and the story keeps you hooked. Good game design doesn't age, and this is proof of that. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is a classic that's still worth playing even 20 years later. Uncharted II: Among Thieves. So, Uncharted II: Among Thieves came out way back in 2009, and this game is still absolutely incredible, even today. Like, seriously, when you boot this thing up now, it barely feels like it came from the PlayStation 3 era, because Naughty Dog just nailed everything about it. The visuals in this game were mind-blowing when it dropped, and honestly, they still hold up really well. The way Nathan Drake moves through these environments, climbing up ancient temples and jumping across crumbling buildings, it all still feels smooth and natural. The environments are packed with detail and color, from the snowy mountains in Tibet to the lush jungles and busy city streets. Nothing feels empty or lifeless, even after all these years. But what really makes Uncharted 2 age like fine wine is the storytelling and characters. Nathan Drake is just such a likable guy. He cracks jokes and gets himself into these crazy situations, but you actually care about what happens to him. The banter between him and the other characters feels real and natural, not like those stiff, awkward conversations you get in older games. The action set pieces in this game are legendary. That opening scene where you wake up in a train hanging off a cliff immediately hooks you in. Then you got moments like escaping from a collapsing building while a helicopter is shooting at you, or that insane convoy chase through the streets where you're jumping between trucks and fighting bad guys. These moments were incredible in 2009, and they're still thrilling to play through today because they're designed so well. The pacing never lets up, and you always feel like you're in this epic action movie. As for the gameplay itself, it's nothing too crazy, but smooth, and has a perfect balance between shooting, climbing, and puzzle solving. The gunfights are punchy and satisfying. The platforming is fun without being too challenging. Well, unless you are playing on brutal difficulty, then it becomes even harder than some Souls games, to be honest. But anyway, the point is, many games from that era feel really clunky now when you go back to them, but Uncharted 2 still feels responsive and tight. The controls just work, and you're never fighting against the game itself. The level design deserves a lot of credit too. Every chapter feels different and takes you to a new location with its own vibe. You go from museums to war-torn cities to mountain villages to ancient temples, and it never gets boring. The game keeps throwing you new scenarios, so you're always excited to see what comes next. Even replaying it years later, those locations still feel fresh and exciting to explore. One thing that really stands out when you play it now is how focused the whole experience is. The campaign is like 10 to 12 hours, and every single part of it matters. There's no filler, no boring fetch quests, no padding to artificially make the game longer. You just go from one awesome set piece to the next, and the pacing never drags. In a time where every game wants to be 50 hours long with a million icons on the map, Uncharted 2 feels refreshing because it tells its story and ends at the right time. Uncharted 2 basically set the template for action-adventure games that came after it. You can see its influence all over the place in modern games. It proved that you could make a game that felt like playing through a summer blockbuster movie while still having solid gameplay mechanics. Tons of games tried to copy this formula, but very few pulled it off as well as Naughty Dog did here. Also, technically, when the game came out, Naughty Dog squeezed every last drop of power out of the PS3 hardware, and it shows. Uncharted 2 is one of those rare games that just got everything right. The action, the story, the characters, the visuals, the pacing, it all comes together into this perfect package that's just as fun to play now as it was back in 2009. It's the kind of game that reminds you why you love video games in the first place. Whether you played it when it first came out or you're discovering it for the first time today, it delivers an incredible adventure that never gets old. That's why it's aged like fine wine and will probably continue to be amazing for years to come.
How does that taste?
Pretty good shot for a journalist.
Titanfall 2. From the very start, Titanfall 2 throws you into a world that's fast, loud, and completely insane. You're not just running around shooting people like every other shooter. The game gives you crazy movement tools that make you feel like a superhero. You can run on walls, jump really high, slide under bullets, and chain moves together in a way that makes you feel smart and powerful. And then there's the Titans, these giant walking robots that are huge, heavy, and so satisfying to control. You're not just in a mech for show. You fight side by side with your Titan, and it actually feels like a partner. You watch it move, follow your orders, and cover you in combat, and that relationship just makes the game feel alive. Also, the story is actually so good here. You play as Jack Cooper, a normal soldier who suddenly has to bond with a Titan named BT. At first it's awkward, but by the end you actually feel like you're a team. The writing isn't super deep or complicated, but it works because the characters feel real in their own way. The missions in the campaign are unforgettable. One moment you're doing insane parkour across huge buildings, the next you're inside a moving train trying to figure out a puzzle while under fire. The level design is clever. Every map has little tricks and secrets that reward you if you explore. You feel creative because the game lets you tackle fights in different ways. Sometimes sneaky, sometimes all-out crazy shooting, sometimes switching between you and your Titan to pull off cool combos. Even the small details make it memorable. The way the guns feel heavy but responsive, the way the Titans stomp and shake the ground, the way explosions look huge but never confusing, the game never feels unfair. You always know what's going on, but it keeps pushing you to be better. Graphics-wise, it still looks good. The levels have bright colors, futuristic cities, forests, and war-torn bases that all feel different. The sounds hit hard too. The clank of Titans, gunfire, explosions, even the hum of the engines make you feel like you're really in the middle of all this chaos. Titanfall 2 doesn't try to be flashy for no reason. It just makes everything you do feel satisfying. You never get bored because it's fast, clever, and full of surprises. Find new tricks, new paths, new moments that you didn't notice the first time. That's why Titanfall 2 aged so well. Because it's not just basic shooter, the game makes you feel fast, smart, and powerful, and every mission, every fight, every jump feels exciting. It's still the kind of game that makes you want to play it all the way through again. Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. The Witcher 3 is one of those rare games that just doesn't feel old at all. You look at it now, years after it came out, and it still hits in almost every way. The story's huge, full of crazy twists, and it's the kind of story that actually sticks with you. You play as Geralt, a monster hunter. And yeah, you're out hunting monsters, but it's way more than that. You're traveling across this massive world, meeting people with their own lives, helping some, ignoring others, and every choice feels like it actually matters. Some decisions can bite you later, some feel really rewarding, and that's the kind of writing that makes a game timeless. Even side quests feel special. You're not just killing 5 rats or running fetch quests, you might be helping a merchant with a problem that turns out to be darker than it first looks, or finding a lost kid who changes your story in a small but memorable way. The world is insane. You can ride your horse through forests, swampy lands, or snowy mountains, and each place feels different and alive. Cities feel real, full of people arguing, merchants shouting, guards patrolling, and sometimes chaos happening just in the background. The attention to detail is wild. You can just wander for hours and stumble into something interesting, and it still feels like an adventure, not filler. The weather and day-night cycle make it feel alive too. A sunny day feels peaceful, a rainy night feels tense. And hunting monsters at night in the fog is genuinely scary even today. Combat is another reason it aged so well. It's not some simple point and shoot. You have to plan, prepare your gear, pick the right sword, use magic signs, drink potions, and even set traps. Every fight feels like a puzzle in its own way, especially the big monsters. You can't just button mash, you have to think. And because there's so much variety in enemies, it never gets boring. Every fight feels satisfying, tense, and exciting. Even the visuals, voice acting, and music still hold up. Forests look dense, rivers shine, villages feel lived in, and the music is so good, it really sets the mood for every scene. Geralt's world is messy, dangerous, but also beautiful. And it's that mix that makes the game still feel alive today. Basically, The Witcher 3 aged like fine wine because it got almost everything right. Story, world, characters, combat, and even the little details you notice when you're just wandering around. You can jump back into it now and it still feels massive, exciting, and completely alive. You can replay quests, wander into new areas, and discover stuff you missed the first time. That's why it's still one of the best games ever made, and why it holds up even today.
In one piece. I shall be waiting.
I hate portals.
Rise of the Tomb Raider. So Rise of the Tomb Raider came out in 2015, and this game is absolutely stunning even today. Crystal Dynamics took everything that worked in the 2013 reboot and just made it better in every way. The visuals in this game are still jaw-dropping. You're exploring these snowy mountains in Siberia, and the environments are gorgeous. The way snow looks and behaves is insane. Laura leaves footprints that actually sink in realistically, and snow clings to her clothes and hair. The lighting is beautiful, especially when sun breaks through the trees and frozen forests. Even now, this game can compete with stuff that came out recently because the art direction and technical work are just that good. The tombs in this game are finally actual tombs worth exploring. The 2013 game was criticized for not having enough tomb raiding, and Ryse fixed that completely. The optional tombs you find are these massive puzzle-filled areas that feel like actual ancient ruins. You're figuring out how to use physics and the environment to reach treasure, and it's so satisfying when you solve them. These tombs are the highlight of the game, and they really make you feel like you're discovering something that's been hidden for centuries. The gameplay loop is addicting and satisfying. You're exploring areas, gathering resources, crafting better gear, unlocking new abilities, and finding secrets everywhere. The semi-open areas give you room to explore and approach situations differently. You can go in stealthy, pick enemies off with arrows, or just start a firefight. The game rewards exploration with cool upgrades and lore that adds to the story. Combat feels really good too. The bow is still the best weapon, and landing headshots is super satisfying. You got different arrow types for different situations, and the stealth kills look brutal. Lara moves fluidly through environments, sliding under obstacles, climbing quickly, and it all feels smooth and responsive. The animations are top tier, and everything flows together naturally. The crafting system adds a nice survival element. You're collecting materials to make ammo, healing items, and special arrows. It's not super deep, but it gives you something to do while exploring and makes you pay attention to your surroundings. Finding resource dashes hidden around the map feels rewarding. Just Cause 3 came out in 2015, back when big open world games were all about freedom and chaos. This was Avalanche Studios at their peak, the same team that already made Just Cause 2 a cult favorite. Instead of changing the formula, they doubled down on what people already loved and pushed it way further. Bigger map, better physics, better movement, more things to break. The game takes place on a Mediterranean island called Medici. It is bright, sunny, and looks peaceful, but it is under full control of a brutal dictator. You play as Rico Rodriguez, and honestly, the story is just an excuse. The real goal is simple: free the island by destroying everything tied to the regime. Bases, statues, fuel tanks, radar towers, bridges. If it belongs to the enemy, the game wants you to tear it down. What makes Just Cause 3 stand out is how it treats destruction like a toy. This is not a cover shooter where you hide behind walls and play it safe. The grappling hook is the core of the whole game. You can attach enemies to objects, cars to buildings, helicopters to the ground, or two guards together and just let physics do the work. Then there's the wingsuit, which completely changes how you move. You're not running from mission to mission. You are flying across the map, diving off mountains, gliding between bases, and chaining the grappling hook mid-air to stay moving non-stop. The map itself is huge and actually fun to explore. It is full of military bases, towns, hidden challenges, and random chaos. You might start heading to a mission and suddenly see a convoy or a base nearby, and one thing leads to another. 30 minutes later, half the area is liberated and you forgot what you were doing in the first place. That kind of distraction is what this game does best. Gunplay is decent, but it's not the main attraction. Vehicles are where things get crazy. Jets, tanks, helicopters, boats, sports cars, monster trucks, everything feels like it exists to break the world around it. Explosions look great, buildings collapse, bridges fall apart, and the game engine really shows its strength here. Avalanche built their tech around physics, and Just Cause 3 is basically a showcase of that. This game also came out during a time when single-player sandbox games were still made just to be fun, not padded with live service stuff or endless grinding. You boot it up, you mess around, you cause destruction, and you log off satisfied. No pressure, no deep systems to memorize, no boring realism. If you're bored right now and want a game that lets you shut your brain off and just enjoy pure freedom, Just Cause 3 still holds up. It's messy, loud, sometimes dumb, but in a very honest way. It knows what it's trying to be, and it never pretends to be anything else.
Choppers are inbound. I repeat, choppers are inbound.
Look, if you want a game that actually respects your time and doesn't try to sell you a battle pass every 5 seconds, you need to check out Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. This game came out in 2021 from Eidos Montreal, who are the same people that made those really smart Deus Ex games. Everyone was super scared before it launched because the Avengers game from the year before was such a massive dumpster fire, but this one actually ended up being a total masterpiece that nobody saw coming. The best thing about this game is that it is a pure single-player story. You only play as Peter Quill, also known as Star-Lord, but you are basically the coach for the rest of the team. You can tell Rocket to hack stuff, tell Groot to build bridges, or have Gamora slice things in half. It feels like you're actually leading a group of idiots who barely like each other. The banter is constant, and it is actually funny, not like that forced Marvel humor you see in some of the newer movies. They are always arguing and talking over each other while you walk through these crazy alien worlds that look like a neon fever dream. They also have this thing called the huddle mechanic, which is basically the coolest thing ever. When your team is getting beat up, you can call a timeout in the middle of the fight. Everyone gathers around and starts complaining, and you have to pick the right words to motivate them based on what they're saying. If you get it right, Peter flips his Walkman on and a random 80s song like Kickstart My Heart or The Final Countdown starts blasting, while everyone gets a massive power boost. Eidos Montreal actually won Best Narrative at the Game Awards, and they totally deserved it. The story is way deeper than you'd expect for a superhero game. It deals with some pretty heavy stuff like grief and loss, but it never feels depressing because the characters have so much heart. Also, fun fact, the developer actually created a real-life heavy metal album for the fictional band Star-Lord just for this game, because that's where Peter got his name. It's that level of detail that makes the game feel special. It is a total shame that Square Enix said it didn't meet their sales expectations, because it is easily one of the best linear games of the last decade. It doesn't have a boring open world full of icons to check off. You just go from one beautiful level to the next, shooting aliens with your electronic blasters and making choices that actually change how the team treats you.
It's like this one doesn't feel pain!
The earlier Metro games were very tight and linear, all about dark tunnels, gas masks, and slow survival. Exodus keeps that soul, but finally lets the series breathe. The devs at 4A Games moved the story out of the metro tunnels and into wider open areas, and that change alone makes the game feel fresh without losing what made it special. You still play as Artyom, still dealing with radiation, broken weapons, and low ammo. That part never goes away. What changes is the structure. Instead of being stuck underground the whole time, you travel across Russia on a train with your crew. Each major area is like a small open world. You explore at your own pace, loot buildings, help strangers, and stumble into danger without the game holding your hand. The gameplay feels slow and heavy in a good way. Guns jam, you clean them by hand, and ammo always feels limited. This is not a run-and-gun shooter. Every fight feels risky, and sometimes avoiding combat is the smarter move. Stealth matters a lot, especially if you want better endings. The game rewards patience instead of chaos. What really sells Metro Exodus is the atmosphere. The world feels quiet, lonely, and broken. You hear wind, creaking metal, distant sounds, and it keeps you on edge even when nothing is happening. Nighttime is especially tense. Mutants come out, visibility drops, and suddenly a simple walk turns into a survival situation. Story-wise, this is still very much a character-driven game. The people on the train feel like a real group, not just quest givers. You talk to them between missions, hear their worries, jokes, and arguments. Those small moments make the journey feel personal. This is one of those games where you actually slow down and listen. Some players did not like the open areas and preferred the old tunnel style. That is fair, but Exodus does something brave. It evolves the series instead of repeating itself. Usually when you play a Mafia game, you expect to be some guy in a fancy suit named Joey eating pasta and talking about the family, but they threw all of that out the window. They put you in the shoes of Lincoln Clay, a black Vietnam veteran in 1968, and they basically made a game about burning down the entire Italian mob from the outside. It's a revenge story that is so mean and so violent it makes the first two games look like a cartoon. The developers really put their soul into making New Bordeaux feel like a real place. It is probably the most atmospheric city I've ever seen in a sandbox game. You've got the jazz clubs, the swampy bayous, and the constant tension of the late 60s. The music is also just insane. They must have spent half the budget just getting the rights to the songs. You'll be driving a stolen muscle car while Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones is playing, and for a second you actually feel like you're in a high-budget movie. It's peak vibe gaming, even if the graphics have some weird lighting issues where the sun looks like a nuclear bomb is going off. Now, everyone complains that the game is repetitive, and yeah, it kinda is. You basically spend 30 hours doing the same three things: killing drug dealers, blowing up crates, and interrogating guys in the back of a car. But honestly, the combat is so heady and satisfying that I didn't even care. Lincoln Clay moves like a freight train. When you do a stealth kill, he doesn't just knock them out. He uses a huge combat knife to basically delete them. It feels way more real than most games where you just hide in a bush. You're not a superhero, you're a guy who was trained by the CIA to be a one-man army, and it shows in every animation. The coolest part is the underboss system. You have to manage 3 different lieutenants. Cassandra, Burke, and actually Vito Scaletta from Mafia II makes a comeback. When you take over a district, you have to decide who gets to run it. If you keep giving all the land to Vito because you like him, the other 2 will get pissed off and eventually they will literally betray you and you have to kill them. It's a great way to make your choices actually feel like they matter. Plus, the way the story is told through these fake documentary interviews from the future is genius. It makes the whole game feel like a true crime special on History Channel. Even though it had a rocky launch with a lot of bugs, the definitive edition fixed a lot of that junk. If you want a game with an actual story that has something to say, and you don't mind a bit of a grind, this is the one. It's gritty, it's loud, and it has the best ending of any open-world game in that era. It's basically a middle finger to the traditional mob story, and that's why it's awesome. Respawn Entertainment clearly went bigger this time. More planets, bigger areas, deeper combat, and more freedom in how you play. It is still very much a single-player Star Wars game. No live service nonsense, no multiplayer focus, just a full story-driven experience. You play as Cal Kestis again, but this is not the same kid from the first game. He's older, more confident, and way more dangerous. The story takes place years after Fallen Order, and you can feel the weight on him. The Empire is still everywhere, and surviving as a Jedi is getting harder, not easier. Combat is where Survivor really shines. The lightsaber system is expanded with different stances, and they actually change how the game feels. You can play fast, slow, heavy, defensive, whatever fits you. Switching styles keeps fights fresh, and enemies push back harder than before. This is not a button mash game. Timing, blocking, and learning enemy patterns matters. Exploration is also much better. Some planets are huge, almost like mini open worlds. You have side quests, optional bosses, puzzles, and secrets everywhere. It rewards curiosity. You wander off the main path and almost always find something useful or interesting. Platforming is smoother too, and traversal feels less frustrating than the first game. A lot of people complained about performance at launch, and that criticism was fair. The game had issues. But underneath that, there is a really strong experience. The writing is solid, characters are likable, and it actually feels like Star Wars, not just a game with a skin on it. The music, sound design, and environments all sell the fantasy.
It's hard to breathe.
Hi-Fi Rush, this thing basically fell out of the sky in January 2023. Most games spend 5 years annoying you with trailers and delays, but Tango Gameworks just walked onto a stage at an Xbox event and said, hey, we made a new game and you can play it in 5 minutes. That kind of shadow drop almost never happens anymore because marketing teams usually want to squeeze every penny out of pre-orders. The craziest part is who made it. Tango Gameworks is the studio founded by Shinji Mikami, the guy who literally created Resident Evil. Before this, they were known for making The Evil Within, which is basically a game about being miserable in a dark hallway while monsters try to eat your face. So when they dropped this bright neon-colored rhythm game that looks like a Saturday morning cartoon, everyone was shocked. It was like seeing a goth kid suddenly show up to school in a Hawaiian shirt and start dancing. You play as this guy named Chai who wants to be a rock star, but he ends up getting a music player fused into his chest by a corrupt tech company called Vandalay. Now the entire world moves to the beat of the music. The trees sway to the beat, the machines stomp to the beat, and even your attacks are way stronger if you time them with the song. It's basically a character action game like Devil May Cry, but you have to have rhythm. The soundtrack is also legendary with bands like Nine Inch Nails and the Black Keys just blasting while you're destroying robots with a guitar made of scrap metal. But we have to talk about the corporate drama because it is honestly insane. Microsoft owned the studio and the game was a massive hit. It won awards, it had millions of players, and everyone loved it. Then, in a total villain move, Microsoft decided to shut down Tango Gameworks in 2024 anyway. It made absolutely zero sense and the entire internet was furious because it felt like the developers were being punished for actually making a good game. The game itself is pure joy. The animation is so smooth that it looks like a high-budget movie, and the characters actually have personalities that aren't just tough guy tropes. There's a robotic cat named 808 that helps you out, and she is basically the mascot of the year. If you want a game that feels handmade and creative instead of just another boring open-world checklist, you need to play this. It is easily one of the best things to come out of the Xbox era, even if the corporate bosses tried to kill it off.
Roper, clean up this mess.
Cat time. Let's go.
If you've ever watched a Jackie Chan movie or The Raid and thought, I could totally do that, Sifu is here to prove that you absolutely cannot. This game is a brutal reality check. It was developed by a French indie studio called Slow Clap and released in 2022. These are the same people who made Absolver, so they've basically spent their entire professional lives obsessing over how to make digital people punch each other in the most realistic way possible. The story is a classic Pac-Man kung fu revenge tale. Your family is murdered by 5 martial arts masters, and you spend your whole life training to hunt them down. But here's the hook that makes the game legendary. You have a magic pendant that lets you come back to life every time you die. The catch is that every time you resurrect, you age. You might start the first level as a 20-year-old kid, but if you suck at the game, you'll be a 75-year-old man with a white beard by the time you reach the second boss. As you get older, you hit harder because you're wiser, but your health bar shrinks because, well, you're an old man. If you die after age 75, it's game over for real. The combat is some of the most satisfying stuff I've ever felt in a game, but it is steep. It's not a button masher. If you just walk into a room and start spamming square, a random guy with a lead pipe will absolutely humble you. You have to learn how to parry, how to structure your defense, and how to use the environment. You can kick a footstool at someone's shins, slam their head into a counter, or catch a bottle out of midair and throw it back. It's pure choreography. When you finally get into the zone, you feel like John Wick, but until then, you're basically a human punching bag. When the game first launched, it didn't even have difficulty settings. It was basically the developers saying, get good or get old. People complained so much that they eventually added an easier mode, but honestly, the struggle is the whole point. There's this one level called The Club that became famous because it was a total brick wall for players. People were reaching that boss at age 25 and leaving at age 70. It's a total test of patience and muscle memory. Slow Clap clearly loves cinema because the game is full of movie references. There is a whole sequence in a hallway that is a direct 2D tribute to the movie Oldboy, and it's one of the coolest things I've ever played. The art style is also gorgeous. It looks like a moving oil painting, which helps take the edge off the fact that you're getting your teeth kicked in for the 100th time. If you want a game that actually rewards you for learning its systems instead of just holding your hand, Sifu is a masterpiece. Just be prepared to feel very, very old by the time the credits roll. Like a Dragon, Ishin? Look, if you've ever played a Yakuza game and thought, this is cool, but I wish everyone had katanas and wore kimonos, then Like a Dragon Ishin is exactly what you need. This game has a wild history. It originally came out back in 2014 only in Japan, and for years, Western fans were basically begging RGG Studio to translate it. We finally got this Unreal Engine 4 remake in 2023, and honestly, it's like a fever dream for anyone who likes samurai movies. The developers did something hilarious here. Instead of making new characters, they just took the famous faces from the main series and cast them as historical figures from the 1860s. So you're playing as Sakamoto Ryoma, but he looks and sounds exactly like Kazuma Kiryu. It's basically the Yakuza Cinematic Universe actors putting on a school play about the end of the samurai era. You've got Majima running around as a high-ranking captain of the Shinsengumi, and seeing these legendary tough guys in historical outfits is just pure fan service that actually works. The combat is where things get really stupidly fun. You aren't just swinging a sword, you have 4 different styles you can switch between on the fly. You've got the swordsman style for classic duels, gunman where you literally just spam a revolver at people in the 19th century, and wild dancer where you use a sword in one hand and a gun in the other while spinning around like a deadly ballerina. It's fast, it's gory, and it's got all those heat actions where you do stuff like shove an orange into a guy's mouth and then punch it. It's peak RGG Studio nonsense. What makes this a great boredom killer is the sheer amount of side content. This studio is the king of distractions. You can spend 5 hours doing the main plot about political revolution and betrayal, and then spend the next 10 hours running a farm, cooking vegetables, and trying to pay off a debt for a girl named Haruka. Or you can go to the racing track and bet on chickens. I'm not even kidding. You can also collect trooper cards, which let you summon special powers in battle. Some of them literally let you shoot lightning out of your hands. It makes zero sense historically, but it's so fun, you just stop caring. This was a big moment for Sega, because it proved that Western audiences actually want these weird historical spin-offs. The game is a bit stiff in places because you can tell it's an older game design wearing a fresh coat of paint, but the heart is there. It's got that perfect mix of super serious drama about honor and absolute idiocy in the streets. If you want a game where you can feel like a legendary swordsman one minute and a world-class interior designer for a doghouse the next, this is the one.
江戸から土佐に戻って早々、なんであんな真似をした？あ？どうして下級武士の分際で上司に立てつくような真似をしたのかって聞いてんだ。あ
Devil May Cry 5, after years of silence and mixed feelings around the reboot, this game felt like a proper return. It sticks to what made Devil May Cry famous in the first place: fast combat, stylish action, over-the-top characters, and zero shame about being a video game. The structure is very straightforward. You move from mission to mission with no open-world fluff. Each level is built around combat arenas, short exploration, and boss fights. That sounds simple, but it works because the real depth is in how you fight, not where you go. The game constantly pushes you to play better and not just survive. Combat is the heart of everything. You play as multiple characters, and each one feels completely different. Nero uses mechanical arms that change how you attack and move. Dante is basically a walking combat system with multiple weapons and styles you can swap between in real time. V fights in a very strange way, commanding demons while staying back. It sounds messy, but once it clicks, it feels amazing. What makes DMC5 special is the style system. The game is always judging how cool you play. You can beat enemies by mashing buttons, but the game clearly wants more from you. Mixing moves, staying aggressive, and not getting hit turns fights into something almost like a rhythm game. It is not about realism, it is about looking cool and feeling in control. Story-wise, it is ridiculous, and that is the point. Demons, family drama, giant swords, stupid jokes, dramatic music, it fully embraces its own tone and never apologizes for it. The characters know how over-the-top everything is, and that confidence carries the whole game. As a single-player game today, Devil May Cry 5 still hits hard. It loads fast, respects your time, and gives you pure gameplay without distractions. Kena Bridge of Spirits. What makes this game interesting right away is who made it. Ember Lab was not a game studio before this. They were an animation studio. They did short films and animation projects, and Kena was their first ever game. That matters, because the whole game feels like it was made by people who care a lot about visuals, timing, and small details, not just systems and numbers. At first glance, a lot of people thought Kena was a kid's game. Bright colors, cute little creatures, soft music. That first impression fooled many players. Once you actually play it, you realize this game has teeth. It expects you to pay attention. Enemies hit hard, bosses have real patterns, and you cannot just spam attacks and win. That surprise is a big part of why the game stands out. The setting is built around abandoned villages, old temples, and forests that feel quiet and lonely. You play as a spirit guide, someone who helps lost souls move on. The story is told in a very simple way. No long cutscenes every 5 minutes. You learn about people through the world, through short memories, and through what happened to the places they lived in. It feels calm, but also sad in a grounded way. Combat is where the game really earns respect. Kena uses a staff that works as both a melee weapon and a bow. You block, dodge, time your hits, and manage your abilities. Shields break, enemies rush you, and boss fights demand patience. On normal difficulty, it is already serious, and on higher difficulty, it can be punishing. This is not a cozy walking game pretending to be action. It is a real action adventure. The rot creatures are more than just visual fluff. They are part of the gameplay loop. You collect them by exploring, solving puzzles, and helping the world heal. In combat, they let you stun enemies, deal extra damage, or control the battlefield. Outside of combat, they help move objects, open paths, and solve environmental puzzles. They tie exploration, combat, and progression together in a clean way. The structure of the game is also very focused. You have hub areas that slowly open up as you gain new abilities. You revisit places, find hidden areas, optional fights, and small side stories. It never feels bloated. There's no pointless loot, no endless side quests, no systems fighting each other. Everything feeds back into the main experience. Kena came out during a time when a lot of games were chasing size instead of quality. Bigger maps, longer playtime, more filler. Kena did the opposite. It's a tight, well-made, single-player game that knows exactly how long it should be and sticks to it. That confidence shows. Some people did not like the difficulty spike or expected something more relaxed, and that's where most of the complaints come from. But if you approach it as a focused single-player adventure with real combat and strong art direction, it holds up extremely well today. Before Your Eyes, let's pivot for a second, because Before Your Eyes is probably the most unique game on this entire list. This isn't some big budget shooter from a massive studio, it's an indie masterpiece from Goodbye World Games that came out in 2021. If you're bored of pressing the same 3 buttons to shoot things, this game is going to mess with your head, because you literally play it with your eyes. I'm not joking. The game uses your webcam to track your blinking. You play as a soul named Benjamin Bryn who is on a boat with a character called the Ferryman, and he's taking you to the afterlife. To get there, you have to relive your memories. The catch is that every time you blink in real life, the scene fast forwards. You might be having a sweet moment as a kid playing the piano, but if you blink, you're suddenly 5 years older, and that moment is gone forever. It's a genius mechanic because it mimics how life actually feels. You try so hard to hold on to the good times, but you can't keep your eyes open forever. The developers, Goodbye World Games, started this as a college project called Close Your, and it's one of those rare cases where a weird gimmick actually makes the story 10 times more emotional. You find yourself physically straining your eyes, trying not to blink, because you want to hear just one more sentence from your mom, or see one more drawing you made as a kid. It turns the act of playing into this desperate struggle to stay in the moment. Now, a little warning, this game will absolutely destroy you emotionally. By the time you get to the end, you're going to be a mess, and the worst part is that your tears will probably make you blink, which makes the game skip even faster. It's like the game is mocking you for being sad. It's a short experience, maybe 90 minutes, but it stays with you longer than a 100-hour RPG.
We've got a long, beautiful day ahead of us.
If you want to see what happens when a developer gets handed a $500 million supercomputer and told to make a Pixar movie you can play, you look at Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. This came out in 2021 from Insomniac Games, and it was basically the only reason to own a PS5 for the first year of its life. While every other studio was still making games that had to run on your dusty old PS4, Insomniac said screw that and built this specifically to flex the power of that new SSD. The whole hook here is the dimension hopping. Because the SSD loads data so fast, you can jump through a literal purple hole in reality and instantly be on a completely different planet with 0 loading screens. Back in the day, you'd have to sit through a 30-second elevator ride or a squeeze through a tight gap animation while the game panicked in the background trying to load the next room. In Rift Apart, it happens in a blink. It's a total flex, and honestly, even 4 years later, it still feels like magic. But the real star of the show isn't even Ratchet, it's Rivet. She's the female Lombax from another dimension who actually has a personality that isn't just, I'm a hero who saves the galaxy. She's a bit cynical, she's a rebel, and she has a cool robot arm. The chemistry between the characters is actually great, and the writing is genuinely heartwarming without being too cringe. It's one of those rare games that your little brother can enjoy, but you'll actually stay awake playing, because the weapons are absolutely unhinged. Since it's an Insomniac game, the guns are the best part. You've got the topiary sprinkler, which literally turns enemies into garden hedges so you can smash them, and the ricochet, which is a ball you can bounce off a guy's head like 5 times in a row. It's chaotic, colorful, and the haptic feedback on the DualSense controller makes every trigger pull feel different. If you pull the trigger halfway, the gun does one thing. Pull it all the way, and it does another. It's the kind of stuff that makes you realize why we keep buying new consoles every 7 years. The only real L this game takes is that it's pretty short. You can 100% the whole thing in about 12 to 15 hours, which for a $70 game had some people crying in the comments back in 2021. But honestly, I'd rather have 10 hours of pure, polished perfection than 80 hours of walking through a desert picking up 500 hidden feathers. It's a snack of a game, but it's a gourmet snack.
does Pierre have?
Maybe the fixer will help finish them off.
Watch Dogs 2. This is the game where Ubisoft figured out how to let loose and have some fun. You're Marcus Holloway, a hacker who's part of DedSec, this quirky little crew fighting against big corporations. But unlike the first game's overly serious tone, this one is bright, chaotic, it doesn't take itself too seriously. San Francisco is your playground, and wow, does it look good. The streets feel alive, there are street performers, random NPCs having arguments, and all the little details that make it feel like more than just a map. You can climb rooftops, zip through traffic, or just wander around messing with people's cars. I mean, it's impossible not to laugh when you hack a car and send it speeding off into chaos. The hiking system is where the magic happens. The amount of stuff you can mess with is wild. You can set traps, cause blackouts, or remotely control vehicles. Missions let you get creative too. Sneak in with your drone, go loud with guns blazing, or just sit back and hack your way to victory. It's all about doing things your way, and that's what makes it so fun.
Hardcore. Now, for some reason, Spleen hammered all.
Lost Judgment is the kind of open-world game that feels like it was made with care. It's not the biggest or the most sprawling, but every inch of it feels alive and packed with personality. You play as Takayuki Yagami, a private detective juggling murder mysteries, high school drama, and a whole lot of street fights. It's a mix of intense storytelling and a world that's just so fun to mess around in. The cities of Kamurocho and Izazaki Ijinsho are small compared to other open-world games, but they're dense with detail. Every street feels distinct, from neon-drenched alleys to cozy bars, and there's always something happening around you. I spent hours just wandering around, checking out shops, playing arcade games, and stumbling into weird side cases. The world doesn't just exist for you to pass through, it feels like a place you live in. Combat is fast and fluid, and switching between Yagami's fighting styles adds a nice layer of strategy. You've got a mix of quick strikes, heavy hits, and crowd control moves, and you'll need all of them for the constant street brawls. It's fun, flashy, and always satisfying to pull off a perfect combo or take down a group of punks with style. What really stands out are the side activities and school stories. One moment you're deep in a murder investigation, and the next you're infiltrating a dance club or solving mysteries for a robotics team. It's a wild mix, but it works. The school stories are some of the best parts of the game. They're funny, heartfelt, and surprisingly deep. The main story is a roller coaster. It tackles heavy themes like bullying and justice, but it never feels preachy. Yagami is a great lead, and the supporting cast makes the narrative even stronger. The twists kept me guessing, and by the end, I felt like I'd been through an emotional journey. If you're into open-world games that focus on detail and storytelling over sheer size, Lost Judgment is perfect. It's got heart, humor, and a ton of things to keep you busy. Whether you're solving cases, beating up thugs, or just exploring the city, it's one of those games that feels personal and engaging.
Won't get away.
S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, Heart of Chernobyl, isn't just an open-world game, it feels like you're stepping into a living, breathing nightmare. Set in the exclusion zone around Chernobyl, the world is eerie, unpredictable, and full of danger. You play as a stalker, exploring this radioactive wasteland in search of rare artifacts while trying to survive mutants, anomalies, and desperate humans. The zone itself is unforgettable. It's not massive like other open-world games, but it doesn't need to be. Every inch of it is packed with tension. You never know what's around the corner. Anomalies might fry you in seconds, mutants could leap out of nowhere, or another stalker might decide to take you down for your gear. The atmosphere is incredible, from the sound of distant thunder to the creepy silence that makes you constantly look over your shoulder. Exploration feels raw and rewarding. The game doesn't guide you much, so you're left to figure things out on your own. That's part of the thrill. You'll scavenge for supplies, find hidden stashes, and pick up bits of lore that help piece together the mystery of the zone. Every step forward feels like an achievement, especially when you survive a blowout storm or make it back to safety with a valuable artifact. Combat is brutal and unforgiving. Bullets are precious, and every fight feels tense. Whether you're battling mutants or other stalkers, you need to think carefully about how to approach each situation. It's not about running in guns blazing, it's about making every shot count and staying alive. The inventory system adds to the challenge. You're always managing weight, supplies, and deciding what's worth carrying. The story is dark and full of moral gray areas. You'll meet characters who are just trying to survive, and their struggles make the zone feel more human. The choices you make aren't always clear-cut, and that adds weight to every decision. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is more than just a game. It's an experience that stays with you. The mix of survival, exploration, and atmosphere makes it feel real in a way most games can't match. It's tough, it's haunting, and it's one of those open worlds you'll never forget. Fallout 3 is the kind of game that throws you into a world and says, good luck! Set in the post-apocalyptic ruins of Washington, D.C., it's part RPG, part survival story, and all about what you choose to make of it. You start as a vault dweller who steps out into the wasteland for the first time, and the moment you see the sun and the destroyed landscape stretching out in front of you, you know you're in for something special. The world is massive, but what makes it stand out is how packed it is with things to discover. You can stumble into an abandoned school filled with raiders, find a radio station run by the charismatic Three Dog, or end up in Rivet City, a massive aircraft carrier turned settlement. Every location feels like it has a story, whether it's a big quest or just a sad little skeleton clutching a teddy bear in a ruined house. Combat is a mix of real-time shooting and the VAT system, which lets you pause and target specific enemy body parts. It's gory, ridiculous, and surprisingly strategic. Taking out a super mutant with a well-placed headshot in slow motion never gets old. Plus, there's a ton of customization with weapons and gear, so you can really make your character feel unique. The story pulls you in from the start. You're searching for your father, but along the way, you get caught up in the wasteland's chaos. Do you help rebuild society, or do you look out for yourself? The game doesn't tell you how to play, it gives you choices, and your decisions have consequences. Blowing up Megaton for the caps, that's on you. Helping the Brotherhood of Steel fight the Enclave, go for it. It's your story to shape. The atmosphere is top-notch. The wasteland feels lonely but alive, with a haunting soundtrack and environmental storytelling that makes every step feel meaningful. The radio stations, especially Galaxy News Radio, add a layer of charm and nostalgia that contrasts beautifully with the harshness of the world. Fallout 3 isn't just a game, it's a world you get lost in. Whether you're exploring, battling, or just listening to old-timey tunes while walking into the unknown, it's the kind of game that sticks with you. It's bleak, it's messy, and it's a masterpiece of open-world storytelling. Far Cry Primal is Far Cry without the guns and explosions, but somehow it works. You're T.A.K.E.R, a caveman in the Stone Age trying to build up your tribe while everything in the wild tries to kill you. It's all about surviving, hunting, and fighting rival tribes. And honestly, it's a lot of fun. The world of Ulros is gorgeous. You've got dense forests, icy mountains, and open fields, all filled with wildlife that feels alive. Sometimes a deer runs past, and other times a pack of wolves decides your dinner. It's intense, but it makes the world feel dangerous in a good way. The combat is simple but satisfying. You've got spears, bows, and clubs, and everything feels brutal and up close. Taming animals is probably the coolest part. You can have a wolf fight by your side or ride a mammoth into battle. It's such a great way to make you feel like the king of the wild. There's no modern dialogue, everyone speaks in this ancient language with subtitles, which is weird at first, but makes everything feel authentic. The crafting is straightforward too. You gather stuff like wood, stone, and animal skins to upgrade weapons or build your village. It keeps you busy without feeling overwhelming. The story is pretty basic, survive, grow your tribe, and take down rival groups, but it gets the job done. It's not about complex characters or twists, it's about the experience of living in this raw, dangerous world. Far Cry Primal might not be for everyone, but if you're looking for something different, it's worth a shot. It's immersive, simple, and just plain fun to run around in a world where you're not at the top of the food chain. It's like a prehistoric sandbox, and once you get into it, it's hard to put down. Cyberpunk 2077. I have talked about this a lot, but here we go again. So, Cyberpunk 2077 throws you straight into Night City, and wow, what a place to get lost to. You play as V, a mercenary caught in a wild mess involving a high-tech chip that promises immortality and a rebellious rocker turned digital ghost. The story starts big and just keeps going with twists and moments that really stick with you. Night City is a beast. It's not just huge, it's alive. The streets are packed with NPCs going about their day, neon signs flashing everywhere, and little things that make it feel real. You might overhear a weird conversation, stumble into a gang fight, or just stand there gawking at the skyline. It's the kind of world where you stop mid-mission just to explore because it's that detailed. The gameplay it's all about choice. You can shoot your way through, sneak around like a ghost, or go full cyberpunk with insane upgrades. Seriously, hacking the guy's brain mid-fight or slicing through enemies with mantis blades feels awesome. The customization is wild too. Your weapons, abilities, and even your body mods let you create a playstyle that's completely yours. But the characters, man, that's what sells it. Johnny Silverhand, Keanu Reeves, is such a complicated, unpredictable character, and his back and forth with V is one of the game's best parts. And the side quests, some of them hit harder than the main story. You'll meet characters that make you laugh, break your heart, or leave you questioning what you just did. Visually, it's jaw-dropping. Night City at night with the neon lights and rain-soaked streets is like stepping into a sci-fi dream. And the music? Absolute fire. It nails the mood, whether you're in a high-speed chase or just cruising through the city. Yeah, the launch was rough, no question, but with all the updates, the game is in a solid place now. If you've been waiting to jump in, it's worth it. Cyberpunk 2077 is messy in spots, sure, but it's also bold, immersive, and full of moments that'll stick with you long after you're done.
Who gives a shit about motives? Ends justify the means, and right now your end is to survive.
Kingdom Come Deliverance is one of those games that throws you into a medieval world and says, figure it out, you dumbhole. Well, not really. But hey, you're not a hero. You ain't a damn knight either, nor some frickin' chosen one. You are just a dude called Henry, a blacksmith's son who starts off barely able to hold a sword. What makes this game so special is how grounded it is. No dragons, no magic, just the brutal, dirty, and fascinating reality of 1400s Bohemia. The world is ridiculously detailed. You're wandering through forests that feel alive, stumbling onto tiny villages that look like they were ripped straight out of history books, and running into random events that make the world feel unpredictable. It's not just pretty scenery. Everything you see has purpose. Whether it's a road leading to a hidden mill or a castle looming in the distance, it all feels real. The gameplay is, well, it's tough. No sugarcoating that. The combat system is like a medieval duel simulator. You're managing stamina, aiming your strikes, and trying not to get smacked in the face. At first it feels clunky, but once it clicks, it's incredibly rewarding. Winning your first proper sword fight feels like an actual accomplishment. And it's not just about combat. You'll be hunting, picking locks, and even learning to read, which takes actual in-game effort. The story is surprisingly personal. You're not saving the world, you're just trying to get revenge for your family while navigating a world full of politics, war, and people way above your pay grade. Henry's journey feels grounded, and the characters you meet along the way are well written and memorable. Some will help you, some will try to screw you over, and all of them feel like they belong in this world. What stands out the most is the realism. You're not eating random herbs to heal instantly, you need food, sleep, and proper armor to survive. Even your clothes matter. If you're walking around in dirty rags, don't expect nobles to take you seriously. It's all about immersion, and the game nails it. Kingdom Come Deliverance isn't for everyone. It's slow, challenging, and can feel overwhelming at first. But if you're into detailed, realistic open worlds and love the idea of really living in a historical setting, this game is worth every minute. It's a rough, beautiful, and unforgettable dive into medieval life.
Hey! All of you, gather here! Raise the alarm!
What's up? Shit yourself?
Alarm!
Ghost of Tsushima is one of those games that grabs you with its beauty and doesn't let go. Set in feudal Japan, you play as Jin Sakai, a samurai fighting to reclaim his homeland from a Mongol invasion. The story's all about honor, loyalty, and the cost of survival. But what really shines here is the world. Tsushima Island is breathtaking. Rolling fields of golden grass, cherry blossoms floating through the air, dense bamboo forests. It's one of the most stunning open worlds I've ever seen. And it's not just pretty, it's alive. Animals lead you to hidden shrines, the wind guides you instead of a map, and every corner feels like it has a secret waiting to be found. The combat is incredible. At first, it's all about samurai duels, timing your strikes, parrying perfectly, and taking enemies down with precision. But as Jin embraces the ghost path, you unlock stealth abilities, letting you take out enemies with sneaky assassinations or tools like smoke bombs and kunai. It's a constant balance between sticking to samurai traditions or doing whatever it takes to win. Both styles feel satisfying, and switching between them keeps things fresh. The story hits hard. Jin's struggle between following the samurai code and becoming the ghost is at the heart of the game, and the characters around him like Yuna, who pushes him toward survival, or Lord Shimura, who clings to honor, make it even more emotional. It's not just about fighting Mongols, it's about the choices Jin has to make and the consequences of those choices. The side quests are worth diving into too. You'll help villagers, track down legendary warriors, and unravel personal stories that add depth to the world. Even small tasks feel meaningful because they're tied to the people and culture of Tsushima. Now, one small complaint, some side quests were pretty bland and repetitive. Enemy were also limited. I found the game lacking in that aspect. But other than that, like, visually, absolutely stunning. The game is like a moving painting. The soundtrack, with its traditional Japanese instruments, adds so much atmosphere to every moment, whether you're in a tense fight or just riding through a peaceful meadow. Also, I recently played the Iki Island and it was absolutely beautiful, so make sure to give it a try too.
Maybe near the wreckage of our boat, if it washed ashore. Where'd you get off to?
Red Dead Redemption 2. What can I even say that hasn't been said already 100 times? Because damn man, this thing is the ultimate game of all time for me. It's a journey that pulls you into the Wild West and makes you feel like you're actually living it. You play as Arthur Morgan, an outlaw in the Vanderlyn gang, trying to survive in a world that's leaving outlaws behind. It's emotional, slow in the best way, and full of little moments that make it unforgettable. The world is huge, beautiful, and feels alive in a way that few games manage. You've got snowy mountains, swamps filled with gators, rolling plains, and dusty towns straight out of a western. It's not just about size, it's about how much life there is. You run into strangers needing help, stumble on hidden secrets, or just watch a random sunset that stops you in your tracks. Every detail, from the trails in the snow to the sound of your boots on wooden planks, pulls you deeper in. Arthur is one of the best characters I've played as in any game. He's tough but thoughtful, with a moral struggle that hits hard. The game, too, is full of memorable people. Dutch with his endless schemes, John trying to find his place, and Sadie, who's just a badass. Hanging around the camp, listening to their stories or playing cards with them adds so much to the experience. It's not just a story about outlaws, it's a story about people. The gameplay gives you so much freedom. You can rob trains, go fishing, hunt legendary animals, or just ride your horse across the map with no real goal in mind. The gunfights are intense and satisfying, especially when you use Deadeye to slow time and line up shots. And the little details like grooming your horse or choosing what kind of coat to wear in the cold make it feel more personal. The pace of the game is slow, but that's what makes it special. It doesn't rush you. You're encouraged to take your time, whether that's sitting by a campfire or wandering into a random saloon to see what's happening. It's not a game that wants you to blaze through it. It wants you to live in it. And the music? It's perfect. The soundtrack swells at just the right moments, whether you're riding across a field or in the middle of a shootout. Combined with the incredible visuals, the sunsets, the storms, the sheer beauty of the landscape, it's impossible not to get swept up in it.
Hey, mister.
Far Cry 5 takes the chaotic open-world formula the series is known for and drops it into the heart of rural America. Set in the fictional Hope County, Montana, you're up against a doomsday cult led by the charismatic and chilling Joseph Seed. It's all about guns, explosions, and a surprising amount of weirdness. And it works. The setting feels like its own character. Hope County is beautiful, with sprawling fields, dense forests, and winding rivers. You'll come across small towns, farms, and creepy cult outposts, each with its own vibe. The mix of natural beauty and the cult's presence creates this unsettling contrast. You're exploring this peaceful-looking place, but danger is always around the corner. The gameplay is exactly what you'd expect from Far Cry. You're taking over outposts, hunting wildlife, and blowing up everything in sight. The combat is solid, with plenty of weapons to choose from and fun ways to cause mayhem. Want to sneak in with a bow? Go for it. Prefer to drive a truck loaded with explosives straight into the enemy? That works too. The freedom to approach missions your way is one of the game's best features. The story leans heavily into the cult theme. Joseph Seed and his family of lieutenants are some of the most memorable villains in the series. Their sermons and interactions with you are unsettling, and the game does a good job of making them feel like a genuine threat. The plot isn't groundbreaking, but it has enough twists and crazy moments to keep you hooked. One of the best parts is the companions you can recruit. Whether it's Boomer, the loyal dog who steals weapons from enemies, or Cheeseburger, a massive bear who mauls anything in sight, they add a lot of personality to the game. Plus, they're actually useful in combat, which is a bonus. Far Cry 5 doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it doesn't need to. It's a game that knows what it is, a fun, over-the-top sandbox with plenty of action and chaos. If you're in the mood for a game where you can blow things up, take on a creepy cult, and explore a gorgeous world, this one's a great choice. Dragon's Dogma 2 builds on everything that made the original special. Dynamic combat, a detailed world, and its unique pawn system. But it also comes with its fair share of baggage. Yeah, the launch was rough. Bugs, performance hiccups, and some players struggling to even load the game properly. Let's just say it wasn't the smoothest start. But here's the thing, if you stick with it, Dragon's Dogma 2 offers something incredible. The combat is as good as ever, maybe even better. If you've never played Dragon's Dogma before, imagine an action RPG where every fight feels personal. You're not just swinging a sword, you're climbing onto a griffin, hacking away at its wings mid-flight, or timing a perfect magic spell to nuke an entire swarm of goblins. It's visceral, it's chaotic, and it's incredibly rewarding when you nail it. The pawns are back too, your AI-controlled companions, and they're way smarter this time around. They don't just follow you, they learn from you. If you keep fighting the same kind of enemy, they'll start figuring out better strategies, calling out weaknesses, and even reminding you of what worked last time. It's like having a mini-squad that actually contributes instead of just standing around. Now, let's talk about the world. It's massive, but more importantly, it feels alive. Every town, forest, and dungeon has something worth checking out. The game doesn't just hand you markers and say, go here. It encourages you to wander and stumble into moments that feel unique, like finding a hidden cave with loot you didn't expect, or running into a monster way above your level and realizing you need to run for your life. The story goes deeper this time, which is a big upgrade from the original's more straightforward plot. It's still centered around the dragon, but now there's layers of politics, factions, and choices that make you feel like you're genuinely impacting the world. And let me tell you, some of the twists hit hard. Visually, the game is stunning. The RE engine makes everything pop. Armor glinting in the sunlight, monsters looking absolutely terrifying up close, and landscapes that make you want to stop and just take it all in. It's a world you want to live in, even with all the deadly creatures lurking around. Here's the bottom line. Dragon's Dogma 2 had a rocky start, but it's worth pushing through. The combat, the exploration, and the sheer sense of adventure make it a standout in the RPG genre. If you're a fan of the first game or just love the idea of battling massive monsters in a detailed fantasy world, this is a ride you don't want to miss. Horizon Forbidden West takes what made the first game great and cranks it up, offering a bigger, more beautiful world to explore and plenty of new challenges to keep you hooked. You're back as Aloy, the red-haired badass on a mission to save a world that's teetering on the edge of collapse. This time, the stakes are even higher, and the journey takes you into the mysterious Forbidden West. First off, the world is jaw-droppingly gorgeous. The landscapes are insanely detailed, from lush jungles and sandy beaches to ruined cities reclaimed by nature. You'll stop constantly just to take it all in. The water in particular is stunning, and with the addition of underwater exploration, you'll be diving in the lakes and oceans to uncover even more secrets. The gameplay feels tighter and more varied. Combat still has that satisfying mix of strategy and action, where you're scanning machines for weak points and deciding whether to go for a stealthy takedown or an all-out fight. The new machines are wild, some are terrifying, and others are just straight up impressive in how they move and fight. And then there are the weapons. You've got new tools to mess around with, like the pullcaster to climb faster, and a glider that makes getting around so much more fun. The story is where the game really shines. Aloy is still trying to figure out the mystery of the old ones while dealing with a world full of political tensions and personal betrayals. The characters around her feel more fleshed out this time, and the stakes are much more personal. You'll meet allies that make you care about the outcome, and the villains are more layered than your typical bad guys. Side quests and activities are a huge step up. They're not just filler, they feel meaningful. Whether you're helping a tribe defend their territory, uncovering secrets of the past, or taking down a massive Thunderjaw, everything feels tied to the world and its story. Plus, the new skill trees let you tailor Aloy's abilities to your playstyle, which makes leveling up feel even more rewarding. The game isn't perfect, it's massive, and sometimes the pacing can feel a little stretched, but the good outweighs the minor annoyances. Whether you're gliding over a stunning vista or locking horns with a machine 3 times your size, it's an adventure you won't forget. Horizon Forbidden West is a masterclass in open-world design. It's gorgeous, emotional, and full of moments that remind you why games like this are so special. If you love Zero Dawn or just want a world you can lose yourself in, this is a must-play. Underworld Forgotten Stories isn't just a mod for Skyrim, it's a full-blown RPG masterpiece that stands on its own. Built on Skyrim's engine, it takes you to a completely new world with its own lore, characters, and story. If you're into games that are deep, dark, and brimming with atmosphere, Underworld is a journey you absolutely need to take. The first thing that hits you is the tone. Where Skyrim often feels like a grand adventure, Underworld is heavier, more introspective. The world is beautiful, but there's this undercurrent of tension and tragedy running through everything. You'll see gorgeous landscapes, lush forests, snowy peaks, and eerie ruins, but there's always this sense that something is a little off. It pulls you in and makes you want to explore every inch of it. The story is where Underworld shines the most. It's layered, complex, and isn't afraid to get philosophical. You play as someone haunted by mysterious visions and thrown into a world on the brink of collapse. The game doesn't just hand you a hero's journey, it challenges you to question everything, from your choices to the nature of the world itself. The writing is sharp and the characters feel real, with motivations and flaws that make them memorable. Gameplay-wise, it builds on Skyrim's foundation but adds its own twists. The leveling system is completely revamped. You'll earn experience points by completing quests and exploring, not just by swinging a sword at wolves. There's a focus on choosing specific paths, magic, stealth, or melee, that feel more meaningful because of the way skills are handled. The survival mechanics, like needing food and sleep, add to the immersion without feeling like a chore. The quests are another standout. Even the side quests have depth and often lead to unexpected places. One moment you're investigating a missing person, and the next you're unraveling a conspiracy or facing off against something straight out of a nightmare. It's not about ticking boxes on a map, it's about getting lost in stories that matter. The best part? It's free if you own Skyrim. But don't let that fool you into thinking it's some throwaway project. This is a full-fledged RPG experience crafted with care and love. If you're craving a deep, emotional game with a world that feels alive and a story that makes you think, Underworld is absolutely worth your time.
And honor the path Malphas has chosen for you. This is the only way of showing gratitude to all he and the Lightborn have done for us.
Eric's Home, The Stolen Dream. The Stolen Dream is one of those recent games that just came out of nowhere, and it proves you don't need a huge budget or a famous name to make something incredible. It's a super smooth and absolutely amazing stealth adventure game that will grab you and not let go. The first thing you'll notice is that it's an isometric game. That just means the camera is angled from way up high, looking down on the world like you're playing with tiny, super detailed characters in a living toy city. This view isn't just for show though. It lets you see the whole area so you can peek around corners, plan your moves, and figure out the best way to get past a bunch of bad guys without being seen. It feels like you're a master chess player, always thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. You get to play as this regular girl named Hana, but she's anything but ordinary. Her brother, Herman, is a fugitive on the run, and it's up to her to find him and get to the bottom of what's really going on. The story is a super cool mystery that gets deeper the more you play. It's not just about finding her brother, it's about uncovering a huge secret that's tied to the whole city. That's where the Stolen Dream part of the title comes from, and it's a really neat idea. The gameplay is where this game truly shines. It's all about being clever and sneaky. You can't just run in and fight. You have to hide in the shadows, climb buildings, and use the environment to your advantage. You can even throw objects to make noise and distract guards so you can slip right by them. The controls feel so perfect, making it really satisfying to pull off a perfect, silent escape. It feels like a challenging puzzle mixed with a high-stakes adventure.
Aren't the workers gone? What's that now? I said I thought the workers had left. I can't hear you.
The city of Eriksholm is a character all on its own, with a beautiful hand-drawn art style that makes every street and building feel real and full of secrets. This game is a total hidden gem, and it deserves way more love than it's getting. If you're looking for an unforgettable single-player adventure that makes you think, this is one you'll wish you had played the moment it came out.
I'm asking you, why did the conveyor belt stop? And why haven't you reported it?
But we were just about to.
Yeah, this just happened. If we don't catch her, it's because of fools like you.
Don't tell them, Princess. They'll sabotage the whole freaking mission.
It just came out of nowhere.
Don't do it. You'll only make things way worse.
Well, it took me a minute to search my memory files, but boom! What do you know? It was right there all along.
Telltale's Tales from the Borderlands. Now this one is a wild ride that's way funnier and smarter than most people give it credit for. This game is a perfect mix of story, characters, and absurd humor, all wrapped in the chaotic world of Borderlands. You're not running around shooting everything this time. Instead, it's all about the story and the choices you make, and honestly, the writing is some of the best Telltale ever did. You play as 2 main characters, Ryse, a wannabe corporate guy with big dreams and even bigger insecurities, and Fiona, a quick-witted con artist who knows how to survive in the roughest situations. Watching them clash, team up, argue, and just try to survive is hilarious and strangely heartwarming at the same time.
3, 2, 1, go!
So then why are the alarms still going?
They're not perfect, they're kind of ridiculous, and that's exactly why you end up rooting for them. The story in Tales from the Borderlands is ridiculous in the best way. You're thrown into insane situations like chasing down Hyperion secrets, conning bandits, and accidentally stumbling into life or death scenarios. But every moment is packed with humor, and the dialogue is sharp, snappy, and full of personality. Unlike a lot of games where characters just exist to move the plot, Ryse and Fiona actually feel like people you'd hang out with, even if they're a little messed up. And the way the story branches depending on your choices makes you feel like you're really shaping how things go, even if the game does it in that classic Telltale style. One of the things that makes this game shine is how it blends comedy with real stakes. You're laughing at Ryse's ridiculous corporate plans one minute, and then suddenly the stakes are high, and you're actually worried about whether someone's going to survive. It's a crazy balancing act, but the game pulls it off perfectly. And the world itself feels alive too. Even though it's a story-driven adventure, the Borderlands setting is full of life, wacky characters, weird monsters, and all the chaos you'd expect from Pandora. It never feels boring, and it keeps you guessing what's going to happen next. The visuals are classic Borderlands style, cel-shaded, vibrant, and full of detail that makes every scene pop. And the voice acting is top-notch. Troy Baker as Ryse and Damian Clark as Handsome Jack are absolute standouts, bringing so much personality and emotion to every line. You can tell the actors are having fun, and it makes the whole experience that much more engaging. Every conversation feels alive, every joke lands, and every tense moment hits just right. Even though it's technically an adventure game with Telltale's signature point-and-click style, it never feels slow or boring. The pacing is great, the chapters move quickly, and the cliffhangers at the end of each episode make you want to keep going. And unlike other Telltale games that can feel kind of generic, Tales from the Borderlands has this spark that makes it feel fresh, funny, and genuinely exciting. Honestly, this is one of those games that's easy to miss because it doesn't have flashy combat or massive open-world exploration, but it's pure gold if you care about story, characters, and laughs. It's clever, funny, emotional, and it's got that perfect mix of absurd Borderlands chaos with genuinely human moments. People sleep on it, but once you play it, you can't forget Ryse, Fiona, and all the ridiculous stuff that happens on Pandora. It's a hidden gem that makes you laugh, care, and sometimes just sit back and say, wow, that was actually really smart storytelling.
Hell yeah! This here's some of Rock's tastiest cream!
Road 96.
You're not the talkative type, are you, young blood?
What'd you say? Ha! Just kidding.
Now, this one is a totally different vibe, but it's just as addictive in its own way. From the moment you start, you know you're in for a journey, literally and emotionally. This game is all about escaping a country on the edge of chaos, and every time you hit the road, it feels like you're actually running from something bigger than yourself. You don't have big explosions or crazy combat, but the story is tense, emotional, and constantly surprising. It's like each little choice you make actually matters, and that keeps you glued to the game. You're not just driving down a road, you're making decisions that shape the lives of the people you meet, the country you're escaping from, and even your own story. The gameplay is deceptively simple. You hop from one car ride to the next, talk to people, make choices, and sneak past obstacles. But the simplicity is what makes it so powerful. Every interaction has weight. A single conversation with a stranger can change the entire path of your journey, and you never really know how things will turn out. The characters you meet are memorable, even if you only spend a short time with them. They have their own stories, quirks, and personalities, and it's easy to feel connected to them. You start the game thinking it's just a road trip, but it quickly becomes something deeper. You're invested in the people, the country, and the hope of making it to freedom. The art style is simple but effective, with bright colors in the open areas and darker tones when things get tense, which really sells the vibe of this collapsing country. And the story? Man, the story is what sticks with you. It's about hope, survival, and rebellion, but it's also personal. You feel like your choices actually matter, and the way the game loops these stories together is genius. You can replay it and see completely different outcomes, which makes it feel like every decision actually counts. Honestly, Road 96 is one of those underrated games that sneaks under the radar but leaves a lasting impression. It's not flashy, it doesn't have giant battles or insane action, but it hits emotionally in a way that a lot of big-budget games can't. It's one of those hidden gems you wish more people played because it's a journey you won't forget.
Anna was training to be a veterinarian when the war broke out. The Germans were only 20 miles from Paris when she received a letter from her father.
Valiant Hearts: The Great War. This game sneaks up on you. You think you're just playing some war game, but it's really about people. Like, you're following this bunch of characters: Emil, Carl, Freddy, Anna, and even this little dog, Walt. And the crazy thing is, you actually start to care about all of them. They feel like real people, not just game characters. The way their lives get tangled together in the middle of World War I is heavy, but in a way that sticks with you. It's not over-the-top drama, it's just life being hard, choices being tough, and people trying to survive and protect each other. The gameplay is kinda chill too. It's mostly puzzles, sneaking around, and exploring, but it all makes sense in the story. You're not solving random stuff just for fun. Like, you move boxes to block guards, sneak past enemies, or figure out ways to save your friends. And it's not easy, but it never feels frustrating. It's the kind of game where you stop and go, oh man, I feel for these people. Even little things like Walt running ahead and helping out just hit you in the heart. That dog is basically a tiny hero, and you can't help but smile when he does something clever. The art style is gorgeous too, like a moving comic book. The colors, the little animations, the details, it all pulls you in. But don't let the pretty look fool you. The game doesn't shy away from how brutal war was. You see the destruction, the sadness, and the fear, and it actually makes the quiet moments with the characters feel even stronger. And the music? Man, the music knows exactly when to hit. Emotional, haunting, a little hopeful sometimes. It's perfect for what's happening on screen.
The Germans held their position. The mission was a failure.
What really makes it stick though is the story. You're not just fighting battles, you're living the story of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. It's about love, friendship, survival, and even tiny acts of kindness. You get little glimpses of history woven in too, which makes it feel smart and meaningful. And when you finish, you just sit there thinking about the people you've met, the tough choices, and the little victories along the way. It's not flashy, it's not a bombastic action game, but it's the kind of game that leaves a mark on you.
The German army was about to experiment with a new weapon near Ypres, Anna's hometown.
The Council is a narrative-driven adventure game with RPG elements. You play as Louis de Rocher, a guy drawn into a secret society of super rich, powerful people in the late 18th century. The basic premise is that Louis is searching for his missing mother, but the story quickly pulls you into a web of politics, secrets, and conspiracies. You're not just sneaking around or shooting people. Most of the game is about dialogue, exploration, and making choices that actually matter. Gameplay is mostly about investigating the mansion and interacting with characters. You'll talk to everyone you meet, but it's not just small talk. You have a skill system that affects conversations, things like charm, intimidation, or psychoanalysis. Choosing the right approach can get you info, make allies, or backfire in hilarious or dangerous ways. You also look for clues, letters, hidden objects, or odd details in the environment. Finding these can completely change your understanding of a situation. The goal is to navigate this twisted, high-stakes world without getting manipulated or outsmarted. You're constantly deciding who to trust, who to confront, and how to handle delicate situations. Some chapters are tense and brainy, while others let you explore rooms and poke around at your own pace. The mansion itself is part of the gameplay, creepy, elegant, and full of secrets. What makes the game interesting is how it blends story, choice, and investigation. Every conversation can shift a story, every skill you pick can open or close options, and every clue you find can change how you approach the next challenge. It's not about action, it's about thinking, exploring, and figuring out the complicated social puzzle the game throws at you.
Alright, in my vision yesterday I saw that Mother had this room before me. I'd better search the room. Who knows? Maybe she left me something behind.
Does this pass mean anything to you?
That is Monsieur Merlin's property.
That's right. Merlin the murderer. I want to see what he's left in your safe.
Impossible. I cannot betray his confidence, no matter what you say he's done.
Broken Sword, Shadow of the Templars, Reforged. Alright, let me tell you about a game that is a total masterpiece and a true classic that's been brought back to life. Broken Sword, Shadow of the Templars Reforged is a brand new, updated version of a legendary adventure game from way back in the day. A lot of people might have missed the original, and now this new version is out to show everyone just how incredible this game is. This game is all about a huge mystery. You get to play as a cool American guy named George Stobart. He's on vacation in Paris when he sees a famous cafe get blown up by a bomb. That one crazy event sends him on a wild adventure with a brave French journalist named Nico Collard. They team up to figure out who's behind the bombing, and it turns out it's all connected to this ancient secret society called the Knights Templar. The story is like a super good movie, full of twists, turns, and suspense that will keep you guessing all the way to the end. The way you play this game is different from a lot of others. It's a point-and-click adventure, which means you don't run around and fight. You use your brain. You click on things, talk to people to get clues, and figure out how to use the items you find to solve tricky puzzles. The puzzles are really clever and will make you feel smart when you finally solve them. It's all about thinking, exploring, and putting the pieces of the mystery together. The art style is what really makes it stand out. It looks just like a beautiful hand-drawn cartoon movie, and all the characters have so much personality. The game takes you on a grand adventure all over the world, from the streets of Paris to ancient ruins in Syria. The dialogue is hilarious and sometimes really serious, and it all comes together to create a world that feels so alive. This reforged version looks amazing, with new visuals that make the classic art even better. If you love a good story and a challenging mystery, this game is a must-play.
Do you know Sean Fitzgerald?
Yes, I do. What do you want with him?
I want to talk to him about working at the dig.
What makes you think he did?
The boy outside told me.
I can't imagine anyone employing Sean Fitzgerald on a dig. He wouldn't know a post hole from his elbow.
American Arcadia. American Arcadia is a total hidden gem, and it's a newer game that more people should have played. It's got a super clever story and 2 different kinds of gameplay all in one. The whole game is based on this crazy reality TV show that's a lot more twisted than you think. You play as a guy named Trevor, who is a simple person living his life in a perfect-looking city. But what he doesn't know is that his whole life is actually a TV show called American Arcadia, and millions of people are watching his every move. And get this, if the audience gets bored with him, they vote him off the show, which means he gets removed or worse. The story kicks off when a producer named Angela decides to help Trevor escape after she realizes how messed up the show is. What makes this game so awesome is how you play it. There are 2 parts. When you are Trevor, it's a 2.5D side-scroller. You have to run, jump, and hide from guards as you try to escape the fake city. It feels like a cool action-adventure game. But then, you also play as Angela in a first-person view. You're in a control room and you have to solve puzzles to help Trevor. You can move cameras, turn off lights, and open doors for him so he can get through different areas without being caught. The whole game has this amazing style that looks like an old TV show mixed with a modern thriller. The story is so gripping and you'll be on the edge of your seat trying to help Trevor. This game is a true hidden gem because its story is so original, and the way it mixes 2 different types of gameplay is something you don't see very often. It's an unforgettable game that you'll be super glad you finally played.
Say, isn't that...
Nah, doesn't fit the description. That guy looks like Steven Spielberg.
Until then. I gotta tell you, this game is a perfect example of a new release that's a total hidden gem. A lot of people probably haven't even heard of it, which is a huge shame, because it's a super unique and deeply emotional story that's unlike anything else. Until Then mixes the chill, everyday life of a teenager with a really cool and mysterious adventure that will keep you thinking long after you're done playing it. The game puts you in the shoes of a high school kid named Mark, and you get to live his life just as it is. You go to school, hang out with your friends, and deal with all the normal stuff. But the coolest part is how it all feels so real. You have a phone you can use to text your friends, and you'll get actual messages from them talking about homework or what they're doing later. You can check out social media and see news feeds that give you hints about what's going on in the world. This makes the game feel incredibly connected and modern. It's not just a story you're watching, it's a life you're living. You get to experience all the little moments that make high school what it is, like sharing a snack with a friend or just walking home after a long day. But here's where the game gets really interesting. While you're living this normal life, weird things start to happen. The game is set after some huge disaster, and the world itself starts to break down. You might be in a room and suddenly the background gets all blurry, or a person's face looks weird and distorted for a second. These strange glitches in reality and people's memories start to happen more and more often, and you have to figure out why. The story does an amazing job of balancing this regular slice of life story with a deep, suspenseful mystery that will keep you totally hooked. The art style is another thing that makes this game so special. It's a beautiful pixel art style that is super detailed and full of amazing colors that make everything feel so alive. It's one of those special games you'll be so glad you experienced, and it's a total must-play. RoboCop Rogue City. Now, this is a weird little mix of nostalgia and chaos that somehow works. You step into the shiny metal boots of RoboCop, Detroit's walking, talking justice machine, and immediately it feels like you're living in that gritty, rainy, crime-ridden city straight out of the 80s movies, but updated, like someone actually gave RoboCop a modern playground. The game leans hard into that classic vibe: loud sirens, neon lights reflecting off wet streets, and mobs of criminals thinking they can mess with you. Spoiler, they can't. Combat is satisfyingly brutal. You're not just shooting, you're doing RoboCop stuff, landing heavy hits, using your targeting systems, and watching criminals crumble like paper. And the thing is, it's not all mindless. Timing matters, positioning matters, and yeah, the occasional cinematic slow motion moment where you just blow everything up feels amazing. There's a rhythm to it that makes you feel like an unstoppable force without taking away the tension. You know RoboCop can handle it, but the chaos around you keeps your adrenaline pumping. The world itself is cool in this weird way. Detroit's full of side stuff, from muggings to gang fights, and it all makes the city feel alive. The civilians, the cops, the gangs, it's messy and chaotic, but it works for the theme. You feel like a walking law enforcement nightmare for anyone dumb enough to commit a crime. And the visuals, while not photorealistic, nail that gritty, rainy, urban noir style that makes the world feel alive and dangerous. Story-wise, it hits classic RoboCop beats. Corruption, crime lords, shady corporations, it's all there. And somehow, playing as RoboCop, you actually feel like your choices and actions matter, even if you're just stomping through bad guys and saving civilians. There's a sense of being more than just a machine. You're enforcing law, making the streets safer, and yet you still feel the weight of the city's chaos. Honestly, RoboCop Rogue City is one of those underrated single-player experiences that makes you feel powerful, but also a little nostalgic for the old-school RoboCop films. It's violent, fun, and has enough personality that it doesn't feel like a generic shooter. You walk away feeling like, yeah, I'm RoboCop and Detroit streets are mine. It's chaotic, cinematic, and surprisingly human for a robot story.
They're drugged out of their minds. There's no reasoning with them. Please just leave. There's no money laundering.
Outer Wilds is one of those games that hooks you in with pure curiosity. It's not about combat or leveling up. It's about exploring a solar system stuck in a 22-minute time loop. Every time the sun explodes, you're sent back to the beginning, but what you learned in the last loop sticks with you. The game never holds your hand, and that's where the magic lies. You piece together ancient mysteries by visiting planets, each with its own unique environment and puzzles. One of the coolest things is how every discovery feels like something you uncovered. There's no quest marker telling you what to do next. It's all about exploration and your own drive to understand why the solar system is trapped in this loop. Each planet you visit reveals a piece of the bigger puzzle, and the game keeps you on your toes by slowly unraveling its deeper, mind-bending story. If you love exploration and the feeling of real discovery in games, Outer Wilds is absolutely worth your money. It's a truly unique experience that rewards patience and curiosity, making every minute feel meaningful. Yakuza games. The Yakuza series is an absolute gem, and if you haven't dived into it yet, you're seriously missing out. At first glance, it looks like your typical open-world crime drama with some beat-em-up action thrown in, but once you start playing, you quickly realize it's so much more than that. What makes this series worth your money is its ability to blend serious storytelling with completely off-the-wall side content, and somehow, it all works. You play as Kazuma Kiryu for most of the series, a stoic former Yakuza who always gets pulled back into the criminal underworld. The main storyline in each game is packed with intense, emotional drama. Think betrayals, loyalty, and all the wild twists you'd expect from a high-stakes crime story. But where Yakuza really shines is in how it manages to balance that seriousness with some of the most absurd and hilarious side quests and minigames you'll ever come across. One minute you're throwing down in a brutal street brawl, and the next you're helping a guy reunite with his lost chicken or managing a hostess club. It sounds ridiculous, but that's the charm of Yakuza. It's never afraid to have fun, and it's always giving you something new to do. The cities in the games, particularly Kamurocho, are so full of life that even when you're not progressing the main story, you'll find yourself getting lost in karaoke, arcade games, or bizarre side quests. And let's talk about the combat. It's classic beat-em-up style, but with each new game, they've refined and added depth to the system. You can switch between fighting styles, use the environment as a weapon, or just go full street brawler mode. And if you jump into Yakuza Like a Dragon, they completely shake things up by turning it into a turn-based RPG, which somehow works just as well. What really makes the Yakuza series worth buying is the emotional depth behind all the chaos. The characters are memorable, the stories are gripping, and the games are filled with so much heart that even the weirdest moments feel genuine. If you're looking for a series that gives you a mix of intense drama, heartfelt stories, and pure ridiculous fun, Yakuza is 100% worth your time and money. Whether you start with Yakuza 0 or jump into one of the later titles, you're in for something special. Mad Max is the kind of game that lets you live out your post-apocalyptic road warrior fantasies. You're in the wasteland, trying to survive, and the game nails that gritty, desperate feeling. What really makes Mad Max stand out is the vehicular combat. Your car, the magnum opus, is as much a character as Max himself. You'll spend a ton of time upgrading it, outfitting it with spikes, flamethrowers, and ramming grills. And when you finally take on enemy convoys, the carnage is pure chaos, but in the best way. The world is vast, and while it's a barren wasteland, it's filled with scavenging opportunities, enemy outposts to take down, and crazy storms that feel like they're ripped straight from the Mad Max Fury Road movie. The combat on foot is solid too, with a brutal, weighty brawler system that feels satisfying when you're smashing through enemies. The story is straightforward, but that's fine because the game focuses more on the survival aspect. You're out there making tough choices, scavenging for every last scrap of ammo and fuel, and customizing your ride to stay one step ahead of the lunatics trying to kill you. If you love the Mad Max universe, or just want an open-world game where you can raise hell on the roads, Mad Max is absolutely worth your money. It's got that perfect mix of vehicular destruction and brutal hand-to-hand combat that'll keep you hooked. BioShock. The moment you hit the water and see Rapture, the underwater city, you will be hooked. It's dark, creepy, and beautiful all at the same time. You're basically trapped down there, trying to figure out what happened, and the city is falling apart around you. That mix of being scared, curious, and amazed at the same time is something that really hasn't aged. Every corner of Rapture feels alive. Broken elevators, flickering lights, abandoned offices, and rooms full of secrets make you feel like the city has a story of its own, and you're just seeing a piece of it. The story is really what makes BioShock timeless. You play as Jack, and at first it seems simple. You're just trying to survive. But the way the plot twists and reveals itself is brilliant. The characters you meet are memorable, creepy, and sometimes tragic. The way the game toys with you, makes you question your choices, and even flips the story on you, that still hits hard today. It's smart storytelling that doesn't feel forced, and that's rare in games, especially older ones. Combat is tight and still feels really good. You can mix guns and plasmids, which are basically powers, to take down enemies in creative ways. You can set fire, electrocute, or freeze enemies, and combine that with your weapons for really satisfying fights. Ammo is limited, so you always feel like you're making smart choices, and every encounter has some tension to it. Even now, it doesn't feel clunky. It's smooth, it's fun, and the variety keeps it interesting no matter how many times you play. Then there's the world design, which is just insane. The city feels dangerous, but it also has this twisted elegance. The Art Deco style mixed with decay makes it memorable. Little things like audio diaries, scattered notes, or creepy little details on walls make you stop and think about what life used to be like in Rapture. You can spend hours exploring and still find stuff you missed the first time. Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill 3 is one of those horror games that, even years later, still feels like it's doing something unique. It came out back in 2003, and it was the first main numbered entry on PlayStation 2, which already gave it a kind of next-level polish compared to the older games. But more than the graphics, it's the way the game builds its world that makes it stand out. You play as Heather, who's pulled into this twisted version of her past. And the game isn't afraid to get personal. A lot of horror games from back then just focused on jump scares or cheap thrills, but Silent Hill 3 keeps you tense because the world itself feels heavy. Every street, mall, or abandoned building has a story, and often that story ties into Heather's life or the messed up cult stuff that's going on in the city. The story connects directly to the first Silent Hill, which gives it some deep roots. Heather isn't just wandering a spooky town, she's dealing with the consequences of events from the first game, even though she didn't experience them directly. That sense of continuity is something fans really loved, and it's one of the reasons the game still feels rich today. You care about her journey, her fears, and the weird ways the town seems to reflect her inner struggles. And it's not just story for story's sake. The environments, the monsters, the puzzles, they all tie into that narrative. Gameplay-wise, Silent Hill 3 is slower and more methodical than modern horror games. Combat is limited. You've got a few weapons, and ammo isn't endless, so every encounter feels tense. You can't just rush through everything. Sometimes it's better to run or use your head rather than fight. The puzzles are clever, often integrated into the environment, so you actually feel like you're exploring and interacting with the world rather than just pressing buttons. And the monsters themselves aren't just enemies. Their designs are symbolic and psychological. They tie into Heather's fears and the cult's twisted ideas, which makes each encounter feel meaningful instead of random. The atmosphere is probably what makes Silent Hill 3 age so well. Even today, the fog, lighting, and sound design hold up. The game uses darkness and sound in a way that's still unsettling. That weird hum of machinery, distant screams, the shuffle of monster footsteps, it all adds up. The art direction is grim but unique. The city isn't just abandoned, it's decaying in a very specific way. Malls, hospitals, and alleyways are all designed to feel lived in and then broken, which creates tension without needing constant jump scares. Silent Hill 3 also has the sense of style that stands out. The character designs, the monster designs, and even the way the story unfolds shows a lot of care. You can tell the developers weren't just trying to make something scary, they wanted something that made you think and feel. That's why even today, people still replay it, explore the environment slowly, and notice little things each time. The pacing, story, and atmosphere all come together in a way that modern horror often misses. Mass Effect 2. So Mass Effect 2 dropped in 2010, and man, this thing is legendary. You start the game by straight up dying, which is a hell of a way to kick things off. Shipwreck gets spaced and Cerberus brings you back to life 2 years later. Now you gotta work with these shady folks to figure out why entire human colonies are vanishing. The whole point of this game is building a crew for what's basically a suicide run. You're flying around the galaxy recruiting the most badass and skilled people you can find. Every single person you bring onto the Normandy has their own baggage and problems. That's where the game really shines because these aren't just random teammates, they're actual people with depth. Those loyalty missions hit different because they matter for the endgame. When you help someone work through their demons, they become loyal. If they're not loyal when you hit that final mission, they can actually die for good. Knowing that makes every choice feel heavy. You're not just clicking through dialogue, you're building relationships that determine who makes it out alive. Combat got a massive upgrade from the first game. It plays like a proper third-person shooter now with cover mechanics that work smoothly. Using biotic powers to lift enemies, then blasting them feels great. Each class plays totally different, so replaying as a soldier versus an adept is like a fresh experience. Yeah, it's not as deep as dedicated shooters, but it's fun enough that fights don't feel like a chore. They cut a lot of the annoying RPG bloat from the first game. No more inventory management hell or driving the Mako across empty planets for an hour. Some hardcore RPG fans weren't happy, but it lets the game focus on what it does best, which is characters and storytelling. The streamlining works in its favor.
Damn it, Wilson. This room is crawling with mechs. The whole station is crawling with mechs. I'm doing the best I can.
Assassins create a unity. Assassin's Creed Unity is one of those games that honestly gets a bad rap, but if you look past the launch problems, a lot of it still works really well today. The parkour and movement are smoother than almost any AC game before it, and Paris is just massive. Walking and running through the streets, jumping across rooftops, and seeing Notre Dame in all its glory is still impressive. The city feels alive, with crowds of NPCs, markets, soldiers patrolling, and little side events happening all around you. Even years later, just wandering through different districts and looking at the architecture can make you feel like you're actually in 18th century Paris. The missions are a mixed bag, but some of the variety is still fun. You've got assassinations, stealth sections, tailing targets, and some of the co-op missions are surprisingly clever. Combat is tighter than in previous AC games, but it can still feel clunky sometimes. Timing counters and parries is important, and the AI occasionally does dumb stuff, like guards noticing you way too late, or suddenly spotting you through a wall. The customization in Unity is really nice. You can change weapons, armor, and outfits, and it actually feels meaningful because it changes stats and playstyle. Upgrading gear is rewarding, and the way gear interacts with movement and combat gives you more options in approaching missions. Side missions, crafting, and collectibles are there if you like to explore, though some of the side stuff can feel a bit repetitive, like clearing all the newspaper deliveries or murdering the same type of guards over and over again. Unity also has flaws that can't be ignored. The launch was infamous for bugs and glitches, some of which still pop up if you play certain versions today. There are moments where NPCs behave strangely or animations clip in weird ways. Parkour, while smoother than past games, can occasionally misjudge jumps or ledges, which can be frustrating if you're going for precision. The story isn't the strongest in the series either. It has good moments, especially with Arno and the personal revenge plot, but it's not as compelling as other entries like AC2 or Black Flag. Even with all that, Unity aged better than most people give it credit for. Paris itself is a masterpiece of level design. The verticality, the streets, the crowds, it makes traversal fun in a way few games can replicate. The sense of freedom, being able to climb almost anything and move across rooftops, is still satisfying today. And when the combat and stealth flow together, the game hits that sweet spot where you feel clever for planning your approach, sneaking around, and taking down multiple targets efficiently. Assassin's Creed Unity aged like fine wine in parts because it leaned into what the series does best: open world exploration, vertical parkour, and emergent gameplay while giving you a massive living city that still feels alive. It's rough around the edges, and the story and AI aren't perfect, but there's a lot to enjoy if you take the time to wander, climb, and explore Paris. For all the criticism it gets, the core experience of running across the city, planning assassinations, and just feeling like you're a part of the world still works today.